responding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's 3 minutes past 6, but it's dark. What's going on? Has somebody changed the clocks? I mean, for heaven's sake, I hope it all went well for you. Peter Hitchens was bumping his gums pretty much all weekend. We managed to change the clocks and get through it. The dog was fine. My producer's baby was fine. Emma Wolf is here. I presume your child was fine. We managed to get through it. Nobody died, hopefully. Anyway, when the sunrise comes, we'll tell you all about it. We've got loads for you today. It's the start of another week. It's also the last day of March. So come tomorrow, that's when it really starts to get tough in this country, because all your bills are going up, right? You're going to have council tax bill up. You're going to have your water bill up. You're going to have your electricity bill up. You're going to have your gas bill up. Any energy bill that you've got up. Your car insurance probably up. And when you go to the supermarket to buy food, that will all get more expensive. But don't worry, because Keir Starmer has got a plan. He's been on the phone to Donald Trump overnight, telling him that basically he mustn't try and put any more tariffs on, please. Thank you very much indeed. Please, please don't put any more tariffs on us. Otherwise we won't be able to make any money. But there's so much going on this morning and so many ridiculous stories from the weekend to cover that I'm not sure we've got enough time in 4 hours. We have to do the whole day. We might have to take like 7 hours to do a show. Police trying to curtail democracy, front page of the Times. This is, of course, the story of the weekend about a couple who were arrested by the police because they didn't get on with the teachers in the school where their child was going. Hertfordshire Police we're talking about. A Tory MP, Oliver Dowden, said he was astonished that 6 police officers were sent to these people's homes. We're going to be talking to them later on in the day. Of course, we've also got the National Crime Agency. They found that there's something worth investigating in some of these Turkish-style barber shops. Well, I mean, these places have been around for about 7 years. Suddenly, the National Crime Agency says they might have concerns that the premises are being used by gangsters for money laundering and other organised crime. Well, knock me over with a feather, guys. I mean, it's any wonder that we haven't got any crime being solved in this country if the National Crime Agency takes this long to do anything. We've also got, of course, a story this morning in the Telegraph saying an awful lot of people coming here legally on work visas and on student visas are actually staying over on longer than their visa suggests and becoming asylum seekers, because that makes up something like 10% of them all. I mean, I'm already running out of room here, but let's have a listen to what you were saying to us last week.
Andy in Portsmouth. Bloody hell, poor old Steve Denyer. He ain't had a good week, has he, eh?
Good morning, Mike. I'm just delivering a Motability return car. A beautiful Mercedes car.
No one should be proud of finding an economically illiterate buffoon who's been lying on their CV and making a chancellor.
We got MPs in Birmingham, mostly Labour, in fact all Labour, campaigning for a new airport. Not for Birmingham, not for Heathrow, not even for anywhere in Britain. No, for Pakistan. There's that. We've also got Palestinian activists threatening to bring London to a standstill. NHS paying £80 million for translation services. The list goes on and on and on. We haven't even mentioned Prince Harry yet. We'll get to that as well. 6 minutes past 6. This is Morning Glory. Let's do it. Emma Wolf, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Bit of a breathless start, but there's an awful lot to talk about.
There really is.
I mean, we'll get to Harry, I suppose, in a minute. We should, I suppose, catch up with some of the big stories from the weekend, including this ridiculous story about Hertfordshire Police sending 6 police officers to arrest 2 people who, bizarrely, one of whom turns out to work here in this building as a Times radio producer. You probably know him.
Yeah. Totally normal people. I know that shouldn't matter.
Right.
Totally normal, balanced man, not a crazy activist.
Right.
Not causing trouble, just asking genuine questions, raising questions about the school's procedure.
And those of us who have got children know that if you're dealing with teachers, particularly in the public sector, they can be very, very school-marmy. They can be very sort of dismissive. And, I mean, they were banned from their own school because of things that they had said.
They were banned from their own school. They were also banned from going in to talk about their daughter's actual essential medication and things like that, her treatment, because she has specific needs. They were in a parenting WhatsApp group. We all know what WhatsApp groups are like. Parents do discuss things. The school were accusing them of bombarding them with emails. Well, if they weren't allowed into the school, they were emailing in. They were raising concerns about the recruitment procedure, whether that was open enough for the new head teacher. These are all things that as parents, that we should, or any citizens, we should be able to raise and discuss.
Well, it's certainly not requiring police intervention.
6 police officers going round to a couple's house. I think they
and
were
then they were
searched.
arrested and held for 8 hours, I think, in a prison cell, right?
They had 2 young children who witnessed this, and then apparently searched the house to look for electronic devices. This is absolutely
bonkers, isn't it?
Bonkers.
I think the heads were going to roll on this one, because this is really as bad as it's ever been. I think
it really is.
And they picked up. I mean, can you imagine in the police station when they realised, oh my God, the guy works for the Times,
radio producer,
right? And his wife's similarly involved in the media as well, right?
Yes, she is, and it is that side of it is amusing, but also Maxie Allen has been talking about the fact that they've had a sort of form of kind of PTSD afterwards. When he sees police cars driving by, he feels panicky.
Not surprising.
The effect on their children, that kind of thing.
We'll be speaking to them later on in the show. I mean, the list goes on and on. There was another story of a woman who got a police caution, apparently, for going out and picking mushrooms.
Absolutely.
I mean, what are they doing?
It's funny, but it's also, what are the police doing? As you say, there are so many crimes that need to be pursued and followed up and investigated in this country. When rape convictions are at an all-time low, when you can't get a police officer round to your house.
They solve less than 10% of them. You know, you've got no chance of getting the police around for anything like that.
Meanwhile, they got 20 of them descending on a Quaker, I'm sure we'll get to later, the Quaker meeting house, for 6 women eating hummus.
I know. Although, I mean, I have to say, the way that that's being reported, they haven't invaded a Quaker house. They've invaded a place where the people were meeting because they'd hired it. It happens to be inside a Quaker house. Again, we're talking to the Quaker guy later. I mean, they work for... I mean, I'm not with the police on this at all, and I think they were absolutely way over the top. However, some of the reporting is being slightly disingenuous.
Well, I still think 20 police officers for
ridiculous.
6 hippie...
totally.
For 6, hippie women knitting their own cagoules.
These are women, though, who are part of a Palestinian plot to swarm London London, which is not to say the police are right to do it at all, but we'll give it the usual, shall we say, rule of thumb here at Morning Glory. Let's talk about Yvette Cooper. She was doing the morning rounds yesterday. She was on with all the morning shows and not making very much sense at all. In fact, when she was asked about any of these cases, when she was asked about the case involving the Times producer, she basically sort of mealy-mouthedly said, oh, well, you know, the police have got their own way of operating, but obviously, you know, we will be looking at that to see. I mean, there was no condemnation of it. She wouldn't do it. But here she is talking about a border security summit, because that's what we need. What we need in this country is another summit to make sure we can figure out what to do about the borders. Have a look.
Now bringing in new counter-terror-style powers to tackle the criminal gangs, and today and tomorrow we will be bringing together this unprecedented border security and organised immigration crime summit that will be bringing over 40 countries, interior ministers and law enforcement for all over the world, because this is a criminal industry, global criminal industry, that is worth billions of pounds of exploitation, dangerous crimes that they are committing, and we need that international cooperation.
So in order to solve the problem of our borders being porous and having loads of people coming in, they're going to invite loads of people to come to the country from other countries, some of whom may decide to stay. They may like it so much. You know, who are you? Oh, I'm the border control officer from
Albania, and I'm going to say...
Oh, well, you can stay, no problem at all. Do you fancy having a nail bar? You know.
So is this the same border scary force that Starmer?
Oh yeah. Well, he's smashing the gangs
because he had a really fancy name, didn't he? He had a really fancy name.
Oh,
for
the
his
Border
one.
Command was his,
Border Command. You see, I think they're different.
No, this,
I mean,
they call this
Cooper,
an unprecedented event. It's a summit. It's not an unprecedented event. It's a bloody meeting. That's it.
Yvette Cooper has no clue.
No.
She ended up blaming the weather. She was like, well, it's to do with the weather.
Yeah.
Well, we know that.
Yeah.
We know that, you know, that crossings are up. 43. Migrant crossings are 43% up on last year, at this time last year.
Yeah.
We have had 4,000 crossing people sneaking in on boats.
And the weather hasn't been that great this year so far.
In March thus far. I know, it hasn't been that great so far. She has no clue. What happened to smashing the boats?
Well, they can't smash them. They can't stop them or smash them. They can't do anything. Meanwhile, this is something I've been banging on about for ages, and finally it has been admitted, because I've always said that many people who come here for their student visa program and their work visa, they just overstay and they stay here, right? Migrants who have overstayed their visa now account for 40% of all asylum claimants. The Home Office has revealed 40,000 foreign nationals who came as overseas students, migrant workers or visitors last year have sought asylum, raising fears that visas are being exploited as a backdoor route. Well, of course they are.
Of course they are.
How stupid are these people?
And we know there are universities. We saw it over the weekend. More stories coming out about universities where literally it's not even a university or a college.
No.
You come in, you pay your money, you get your student thing for the next 3 years, and then guess what? You disappear into the system. And those are not being followed up. Those are not being pursued.
No, exactly right. And meanwhile, the Sun's got another spread saying illegal crossings hit a new high, as you just said. We've also got this one, a migrant in sex rap flee. Prosecutors have dropped charges against Adnan Ahmed. This could be the migrant of the day, after admitting to magistrate the 37-year-old had left the country, right? Ahmed was first due before pool magistrates, accused of sexually assaulting a woman at a B&B in Portland last August. At the time, he was living on the Bibby Stockholm barge.
Absolutely appalling.
Now, people say, you know, you right-wingers are always telling us that these people are criminals. Well, that's because they are. He was living on the Bibby Stockholm barge, used to house asylum seekers. When he failed to turn up, a warrant was issued for his arrest. However, he seems to have disappeared. Nobody knows where he is.
And is it
they think he's left the country. He might not have done.
Exactly. The chances are he'll be, you know, claiming benefits and working illegally. So, is it any wonder that local people in these areas where their sort of asylum hotels are plonked down feel absolutely terrified and don't want them?
Yeah, exactly. There's another guy who's been flown, a sex attacker, flown 5,000 miles for medical treatment, who was seeking asylum here. He's a Sri Lankan who found his way to the Chagos Islands and who's on his way to this country, but he needs medical treatment, so they flew him 5,000 miles to get it. Brilliant.
Well, this is all coming back to this two-tier justice thing, really, isn't it? Special treatment for people who are able to claim, whether it's racial, cultural, religious background, all of that kind of stuff, trauma from something else, and they're given special treatment.
It is ridiculous, isn't it?
You know,
absolutely mad. Let's have a look at one more Yvette Cooper clip. This is her talking about third country migration schemes. Sounds familiar.
We will always look at what works. So we've been very clear about that. We will always look at what works. But it has to be practical things that will work, not the gimmicks. What we saw with Rwanda was £700 million be spent on sending 4 volunteers to Rwanda. We'll always make sure that our approach is about what works, and that's why our focus is on tackling the criminal gangs and the networks that organise this.
Yeah, well, they've got this idea, you see, if you can send them to a third country where they can be processed, where could that be, I wonder?
But not gimmicks like Rwanda.
Not, no.
But that's
not
because
one
you
that's already been set
cancelled
up.
it. That's because you cancelled it, and that's why that money was all wasted.
Yes.
I mean, I wasn't a fan of Rwanda, Mike.
Yeah.
But why cancel it and then say only 4 were sent?
They could have at least given it a try.
Or at least put it into practice, i.e. get people on a plane.
Yeah.
None of this, we can't get them on a plane because it infringes their human rights. Get them on the plane and get the plane to take off and then send them there.
Right.
And then see if it's working.
Yes, exactly.
Because the reason for only 4 went was because they only sent 4.
Yeah. Because of the lefty lawyers who all work for the Labour government and who are now quite happy with some of the Labour policies on sending these immigration people abroad, because now that Labour's in, they're not going to criticise them.
But that interview with Yvette Cooper is really, really disturbing because repeatedly, all she says, when you watch it in detail, all she says is the focus is on smashing the criminal gangs. We know that. We know that is but we know that's what we all keep repeating. Well, she needs to talk about how, and she needs to show us what the action is.
Right. And there isn't any.
She's just repeating the same thing.
They keep organising summits because the guy who's now in charge of Border Command, whose name escapes me, who's been in now for a few months, the first thing he did was travelled around Europe to see what they were doing. To see what other people are doing. Well, we can see what they're doing. They're letting them all walk into Britain. That's what they're doing. You know, they go, Britain's that way. Yep. That's what they're doing. We saw it last week in the Sun. The French authorities are physically helping them into boats and physically telling them, don't worry, if you get near enough to the British coastline, they'll come and pick you up and bring you over there and put you in a nice hotel.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, it beggars belief, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, old Keir Starmer was busy wishing everyone Eid Mubarak yesterday instead of Happy Mother's Day, Mothering Sunday, Lent, whatever you want to say.
Any of the other things.
Any of the other things, no, didn't get any of that. Sorry, it's just Eid Mubarak. You know, he wants to reach out to all the Muslims in Britain and around the world who are celebrating. Isn't that nice?
A lot of people actually were
really
quite
annoyed.
offended by that. Yeah,
really
I
annoyed.
think it was really hurtful.
Well, because, you know, it's fine.
And actually wishing everybody Happy Mother's Day or Mothering Sunday wouldn't have excluded anybody.
No.
But this obsession with Happy Pride Month, Happy Black History Month, oh, Happy Eid Mubarak.
Yeah.
Well, could we just remember what this country is actually a Christian country?
It is actually Easter. We are in Lent.
Yeah, we are actually
a period of
Didn't hear much mention of that.
For quite a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people take it quite seriously. Quite a lot of people are religious. They fast for Lent. No mention of Lent at all. I mean, it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, we've got lots more to do. We're coming back to more of it as well, including the only one thing that somebody said to me yesterday was, you know, Labour haven't done anything for Mothering Sunday except for putting morning after pills for free in pharmacies, which is not exactly what you really want if you're trying to celebrate motherhood. You know, abortion doesn't really quite go the same way, does it? But to celebrate 5 years since Megxit, because it really is, can't believe that it's that long ago, we're going to play some key moments from Harry and Meghan's leaving of the United Kingdom, because, of course, they're all over the front page today. Harry's been accused of throwing his own charity leader under the bus, his own charity under the bus, all for helping out Meghan, who was obviously upset that they weren't doing enough for her. Here's Prince Harry's interview with ITV's Tom Bradby on his drug taking.
A fair amount of drugs, marijuana, magic mushrooms, cocaine. I mean, that's going to surprise people.
But important to acknowledge.
Yeah, it's important to acknowledge I took a lot of drugs. Yeah, because they haven't messed his brain up or anything, have they? I mean, what a plonker. We'll come back to Prince Harry, and we'll also come back to the Labour MP who's getting taxpayers to pay for a dog, and the Birmingham MPs who are currently living in squalor and ghastly rat-infested hell, campaigning for a new airport in Pakistan. Brilliant, isn't it? Welcome to the world of common sense. I'm Mike Graham, 18 minutes past 6.
Fundamental change is needed. You, of course, had that the Rwanda plan, but only 4 people went voluntarily. It cost hundreds of millions of pounds.
That was only, but as you know, Peter, there was a new law because we'd had problems in the courts. There was a new law that we had passed just before we had the general election, which would have dealt with that, and it would have been successful. And it would have led to more people being sent to Rwanda. It would have created a genuine deterrence. That deterrent isn't there now, and we're seeing the consequences of it with increased channel crossings.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 20 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham, and Wolf is here as well. We've got so much going on. The front pages are filled with a mixture of things, but an awful lot of them going on about Harry. Chuckered under the bus by Harry. Polo fundraiser hijacked for Netflix. Donations dried up due to Megxit. Prince Harry was yesterday accused of hijacking a charity fundraiser polo match for his Netflix show. And this is this woman, Dr. Sophie Chandorkar, head of his old charity Sentebale, who was interviewed on various networks yesterday, saying that basically she was bullied, she was harassed, she was sort of pushed out of her job. I mean, it's not a good look for Harry, is it?
It's really not. And I think this is actually... Part of this is a bit of a non-story because I think we know this about the couple. They're not the most popular couple. We've heard allegations before about Meghan's staff feeling bullied, feeling harassed, all of that. But I think it's pretty damaging for Harry.
It really is.
Because his humanitarian work, his charity work, is the one thing that people did still respect him for. And now,
because they'd say, well, you know, he does an awful lot of good things.
He does an awful lot of good stuff with the veterans, with Sentebale, this charity that he set up in 2006, which meant a lot to him.
It was meant to be in
his
mother's memory,
in his mother's memory, and it actually meant a lot to him, allegedly. And now it looks like either Meghan's influence is so overwhelming, or that Harry's exactly the same as she is.
Well, I think the trouble is that he sort of dances to her tune, and so whatever she wants, you know, she gets. And it says here, bullying at scale inside the Sun, shock claims by head of Harry's former charity, Sussex brand became toxic, and basically they didn't want to know anything about anyone asking questions.
He wanted to turn up with a Netflix crew to this organised sort of polo event. They had to move the venue. We saw the footage of Meghan moving the woman out of the way so that she wasn't next to Harry.
Right.
Then after that, the woman, Dr. Chandorkar, was allegedly asked to defend Meghan and say, no, it wasn't like that, it wasn't like that. And she said, I wasn't getting involved, I'm not doing the Harry and Meghan thing. So, I mean, clearly this woman has a beef, but, you know, a lot of what she says is going to be extremely damaging.
But it also rings true, doesn't it? And as somebody pointed out to me yesterday, Harry, who loves suing people, is he going to sue her?
Goodness me, well, that'll give him something to do now that he's...
Well, yeah, but will he drag her through the courts if she's telling the truth? He'd be very ill-advised to do so. Prince Harry, on the front page of the Mail, tried to make the boss of his charity defend Meghan publicly after that embarrassing polo match spat. Because we all saw that, and we all commented on it at the time. You know, and I was watching another clip yesterday of her when they were both in Jamaica, when they went to that sort of strange trip to Jamaica, as if they were ambassadors for something, right?
Yeah.
And there's a moment where Harry's talking to the Jamaican Prime Minister, and she's standing behind him with this big sort of, you know, rictus grin on, and she's kind of nudging him in the back to move him on so that she can get to the Prime Minister. I mean, it's quite brazen what she's doing.
And can you imagine the Princess of Wales ever doing that?
No. Of course not.
At a public function with William.
And let's have a look at Sophie Chandorkar. This is her criticising the Sussex PR machine.
At some point on Tuesday, Prince Harry authorized the release of a damaging piece of news to the outside world without informing me, or my country directors, or my executive director. And can you imagine what that attack has done for me, on me, and the 540 individuals in the Sentebale organizations and their family? That is an example of harassment and bullying at scale. And so if the world didn't want to believe that there's such a thing as bullying, this unleashing of the Sussex machine on me and the 540 employees at Sentebale who received this and have had to defend it.
I mean, that is a big organisation, 540 people. And let's not forget that it was last week, was it not, that when this all kind of blew up, Harry just resigned.
On Tuesday, he just resigned.
He didn't go, I'm
them.
going to sort this out, I'm going to take control of this. There's obviously things that have happened in this charity that I wasn't aware of, so therefore I'm going to try and fix it. No, he just went, I've resigned.
He resigned and didn't actually let them know.
No.
Didn't actually let them know. And this is a charity. Let's just remember, whatever you think of that woman and whether she has her own issues, personal issues with Harry or whatever, this is a charity.
Yeah.
And she's talking about the effect that that has had on the charity, on the donations to that charity, and on the people, you know, over 500 people who work for them.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, it really shows you.
And I think Sentebale is a charity looking after children with AIDS
I think
and
so.
HIV.
Yeah. I mean, nobody's talking about them.
Nobody's talking about them
you know,
because Harry and Meghan, once again, are front page.
Yeah, why is it not? Why on Netflix?
It's got to be about Meghan.
It's got to be about Meghan. Absolutely incredible. We'll come back to that because we'll have more clips from Megxit and the sort of the last 5 years. But front page of Daily Express, we don't mention it that often. Families £1,100 worse off in April as all household bills begin to surge. And this is a warning coming from Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride. But we all know this is coming. You know, everything's going up. We've got national insurance going up, of course, for companies. We've got the council tax beginning to go up. We've got energy costs going up. We've got water companies
tripling,
going up by massive amounts.
Shocking
I mean, I'm seeing messages from people all the time: 40% up, 38% up. I don't even know how people can afford to pay for it.
I genuinely don't know, Mike, and I know we say this all the time, but I don't know how much more people can take because you know, it's everything. It's your basics. It's the things that you actually can't not pay.
Yes.
You know, council tax, water. These aren't luxuries. These are essentials. But also food prices. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've noticed in the supermarket things going up 10, 20, 30, 40% just casually like that.
Oh, well, particularly things that are cheap, you know, things that people don't perhaps notice quite so much, like, you know, a tin of tomatoes that used to be 45p.
But they can add 50% on it.
Is now 75p.
And that's where really hard-pressed families are going to feel it because they're already, their budgets are already cut right back.
Yeah. Let's look back at a couple more stories from the government's perspective as well. And that is that the welfare benefits crisis is rising fastest in the UK in the entire rich world. This is a story that's coming from the Institute for Fiscal Studies, been in the Telegraph, page 17. The increase has been much faster in this country because of sickness or disability. It's risen by more than a quarter between 2019 and 2023, post-lockdown, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Much bigger than Denmark, much bigger than France, much bigger than any other country in what would be described as, you know, the Western world.
Yeah, well, these are figures. I mean, these are figures from the Institute of Fiscal Studies, so they know what they're talking about. And this is sickness and long-term disability, and this is, as you say, starts from 2019. Guess what? Guess what lockdown did? Plunged people into this world where basically anything that isn't quite right or anything that, you know.
Well, we now know that more people than ever are suffering.
Just sign yourself off for life.
Suffering from anxiety. You know, they're suffering from ADHD. They're suffering from, you know, frightened to go outside, agoraphobia. You know, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, no, we've got to get a grip on the kind of the mental health epidemic. Of course, there are people with genuine mental health conditions, but I think it's well acknowledged by now that a lot of people are claiming this for normal everyday experiences, life experiences like depression or anxiety.
And the government are saying that they're going to start clamping down on it. And of course, people are worried, probably quite rightly, that they'll pick on the wrong people.
But they're targeting the wrong people. They're talking about people that genuinely are never going to get up and be able to dress and wash themselves and leave the house and go to the office. And a lot of people, vulnerable people, elderly people, they've cracked down on them as well, are very, very frightened right now.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's talk about the Sentencing Commission as well, because that's a story that's going to be big this week. Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, has come out and said that he's going to introduce emergency laws to stop courts adopting two-tier sentencing, right? Now, of course, this is a woman who said that she didn't realise they were even going to do it, even though one of her operators was actually in the meeting when they decided to do it. Last week they said they were going to ignore her. So are they going to ignore her this week?
Well, now she's saying, I'm desperately going to, you know, I'm going to try and stand up to this. This is absolutely outrageous. Robert Jenrick said something brilliant. He said, we've basically got a justice system which is biased against white people. And that is the truth. When you look into these sentences, it's all about special treatment for, as I say, racial, cultural or religious background. Any lawyer, any barrister worth their salt knows how to exploit this to get their defendant off. Any criminal suspect who can claim things like trauma. So a British black person can claim trauma from previous, from relatives who experienced the slave trade.
Oh, really?
Things like that. It really is.
Well, it turns out
transgender.
it's getting
women
worse.
transgender criminal suspects can get special treatment.
Mad,
so wouldn't you just say, well, I'm trans, I identify as a woman?
Well, clearly
because I don't want to go to prison.
Well, there's lots of men that are doing that in order to go to women's prison, and many of them are sexual offenders as well. This on the front page of the Telegraph: ethnic minorities are now prioritised for bail. So criminal suspects who are from ethnic minorities are being prioritised by judges considering bail under the latest two-tier guidelines for the Ministry of Justice. What is going on?
So they have
to Mubarak from the judges. Maybe they'll wish you a happy Mubarak as they let you off.
As they let you off.
Yeah.
And then you know, good luck to the rest of us.
Yeah.
But they talk about important historical events which may have had a greater impact on those from specific groups and cultures. Campaigners fear that British black people can suffer from trauma inflicted on their ancestors by the slave trade.
Yeah, good one.
It's got nothing to do with if you're shoplifting or if you committed a burglary.
What about my trauma from the Battle of Culloden? You know, when the Scots were attacked by the English, you know, because I'm not sure which side to be on. You know,
exactly.
I mean, very traumatic for me and my family.
What about my trauma for the First World War?
Yeah.
I mean, who knows what you can claim trauma for?
Yeah. One of my relatives was shot down by the Germans. You know, what do you want from me?
Well, my father fought in the Second World War.
I can't go to prison.
There.
Speaking of Germans, by the way, you've got to see this. Have you seen this German rocket? This is the greatest video of the weekend. This is, you know how the lefties are always mocking Elon Musk for anything that he does. Here's a German rocket, because apparently Europe has decided they want to join the space race and they want to basically get involved in sending satellites up into space. Britain also wants to join in this. There it goes. You can have start going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Unfortunately, as it goes up, it doesn't really go up for very, very far. Hopefully we'll see it. We've got a very strange vision of it there. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, straight up into the sky. Unfortunately, there we can see it. Can we see it rising? Can't really see what's going on here. Oh, here's another one. You can see it. I can't see what's going on here. I don't know what video this is. Oh, here we go. We're going again. It's going up. But it's not coming. It's not going very far. No, I don't know what video this is, but it's completely ridiculous. You know, we need the one that shows it actually going up and coming back down again. I'm going to show completely ridiculous versions of it blasting off. Anyway, never mind. We'll come back to that. Thank you very much indeed. There's your first gaffe for Friday. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:34. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. One from Sharon, who says, "Morning, Mike. Why the hell is Yvette Cooper having a bloody crime summit? What a waste of taxpayers' money, when she should be spending taxpayers' money on taxpayers." Well, I think there's something to be said for that, or at least spending it on policing, or spending it on stopping the boats, or stopping the actual, you know, immigration crisis that we've got in this country. Let's get a voice note from James.
Good morning, Mike. Now, just to quickly talk about the ethnic minority sentencing, that is absolutely shocking and disgusting. You commit a crime, I don't care if you're black, white, Asian, Muslim, you name it. A crime is a crime. You do the crime, you do the time. Simple as that.
Well, you would think so. You would think it's pretty straightforward, wouldn't you, that you don't actually start sentencing people because of whatever trauma they may have suffered in their last life. I mean, for goodness sake.
Or their relatives suffering trauma. But also,
Yeah.
it is irrelevant. You do the crime, as your caller there says. Absolutely, yeah. It doesn't matter what colour you are.
It really doesn't. Let's talk about Archbishop, or formerly known as Archbishop Wokeby, Welby. He
Now
appeared,
just a bishop.
Yeah, now it's just a bishop. I don't know why he's still a bishop, actually. I don't think he should be.
I don't think he should be.
But he basically spoke out on Laura Kunsberg's show yesterday. It was a bit of a long interview, to be honest.
It was.
And it went on a bit too much. I would have cut that in half. But he's upset quite a lot of people, particularly some of the victims of the church.
Wouldn't you be a bit upset?
Yeah, because not only did he kind of try and ameliorate all the things that he had said before, but he also said that he forgave the paedophile in question. But he also, I mean, we were very critical of him at the time when he made his speech. I think he made it onto Plank of the Week when he made his speech in the House of Lords, kind of resigning, because he'd been very flippant about it all. And here he is actually talking about that yesterday.
It did cause profound upset, and I am profoundly ashamed of that, and I apologised within 24 hours, and I remain deeply ashamed. It's one of those moments where, when I think of it, I just wince. It was entirely wrong and entirely inexcusable.
What were you thinking?
I wasn't in a good space at the time. I shouldn't have done a valedictory speech at all.
I mean, is this now the new excuse for anything?
Yeah.
Oh,
I wasn't in a good space.
So instead I decided to mock everybody who had said I should resign.
And do you know what? It's all about him.
Right.
So he forgives John Smythe.
Yeah.
This
Smythe, his friend.
Smythe.
Yeah.
Prolific paedophile.
Yeah.
Who abused at least, and I'm sure many more people didn't come forward, but at least 130 boys.
Right.
So he forgives him.
Right.
Well, it's not for him to forgive.
I mean, to be fair to him, he did say that.
Yes,
Shortly before he then said, I forgive him. He's like, it's not for me to forgive him, but I forgive him.
But I forgive him.
Yeah.
And if he were around now, I would forgive him.
Yeah. I mean,
but the whole interview was about Justin Welby.
Yeah.
Justifying himself.
Yes.
Talking about his not being in a good space.
Shouldn't he do that thing they used to do in the Middle Ages and just sort of wear a sort of sackcloth and ashes and disappear off somewhere and do charitable work?
Shouldn't he do that thing? Yeah, exactly. Where you go and like pray.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, go and be a missionary or something. Of course he should. Go and help people in fire-ravaged countries. Or
absolutely.
Why don't you go to Myanmar and help people in the earthquake?
Why doesn't he go and join Harry and Meghan with their charitable work?
Well, let's not get carried away. Let's get a voice note from Sally on Eid Mubarak.
Good morning, Mike. Great show as usual. Talking about Eid and Mothering Sunday, did you know the BBC are showing 2 programmes today? Eid Live this morning and Celebrity Eid tonight, talking to celebrities, interfaith leaders and locals at Bradford City Park.
Yeah. And then presumably later BBC Yorkshire will have a special show called Eid by Gum up in Bradford or somewhere. You know, why not? Indeed. The sun's rising. It looks fantastic, by the way, because one of the things
amazing weather.
Amazing weather. We're going to get 25 degrees apparently, according to the Daily Star. Few what a scorcher as ever is going to happen.
Barbecue weather.
Now here's another thought for you. And this is a piece in the Times today talking about the Southport riots. Lord Sewell, who's one of the more sensible people who talks on race issues, right? He's basically said he's Lord Sewell of Sanderstead, who was appointed by Boris Johnson to chair the Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities. He said there were basically 2 players that caused all of the problems in Southport in terms of the rioting. And of course, yes, he said the rioters were part of the problem, but he also blames the editors of The Guardian, because he basically says we found the disparities were driven by the geography, and The Guardian, who said that they didn't want to hear about it, which is fascinating. It's the first time somebody's actually gone, well, you know what? People get angry when they get ignored. Yeah. And people get angry when their feelings and their thoughts and their wishes are completely and utterly just abandoned. by the establishment who say, oh, we can't talk to you, you're a nasty right-wing bigot and a thug.
Exactly. Exactly. And that, you know, that goes back to so many of the issues, people feeling that they're too, you know, that their concerns, their genuine concerns for the places where they actually live, like the asylum problem, where you have people in their local communities who do not feel safe.
Right.
I mean, even in the centre of London, there's an area around the Barbican where they've just plonked down. It used to be a hotel, the Thistle Hotel. I think we talked about it. And it used to be a hotel, and it's now an asylum centre. And the people that I know, I mean, I live there, around the area, people, young girls not going out at night. It's not safe now because you have a lot of young foreign men just hanging around the streets.
Hanging about,
You can't just put people in areas who are waiting, I don't know, waiting for clearance, possibly
they're not. Who knows what they're waiting for?
What are they doing, and why are they being put down in the middle of our country?
And who's policing it? Nobody
exactly.
is. Really.
No one is policing it.
Absolutely ridiculous. Rachel says, "Morning, Mike and Emma. It's as dark as my coffee outside. All my bills have gone up, and an MP is charging us, the taxpayer, for rent for her bloody dog. Happy Monday." It's true. We're going to get onto that. Before we do that, can we have another go at the German rocket? Let's have another go. We misfired the first one. Let's see if this one's any better. Here it is. I don't think we've got any sound on it, so I'll talk over it. So the rocket blasts off, you can see it there, just about to go up into space, because it's going to be part of a new payload to put satellites up. There you can see it there, and you can watch the cameraman panning up as he expects it to go into the ether. But unfortunately, it just gets up to that next level of cloud and basically explodes and comes back down again. That's it. So I think it doesn't go up more than about 150 feet.
Oh, it goes up and comes down again?
Yeah, it just falls back down. Because
I have to say, it doesn't look like Germany, Mike. It looks like somewhere in the Arctic. Are you sure that's Germany?
Yeah, well, it's Norway.
Great for radio.
No, it's Norway.
Oh, it's Norway, but it's a German rocket.
It's a German rocket, yeah, absolutely right.
I was going to say, it doesn't look like Frankfurt to me.
No, it doesn't, no. But anyway, there we are. So if you were hoping that, German ingenuity was going to rescue you from America and Donald Trump and Elon Musk, I'm afraid they've got a bit of a long way to go.
Well, I think Elon Musk has been a little bit more successful than that.
I'm afraid he has. Well, he can send them up and bring them back down again, like with his own control. Should we talk, since we're talking about airports and rockets and things, should we talk about the Birmingham MP's campaign to open an airport in Pakistan? And there's something like 25 other MPs, all Labour, who have signed the petition to do it, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's incredible, isn't it?
What has it got to do with us?
Yeah.
So many people have been saying, sorry, there are quite a lot of problems in this country, but also specifically in Birmingham. They've got rat-infested streets, they've got rubbish piling up, all over their city.
Yes.
And this, I can't remember his name.
It's Tahir Ali, the MP for Birmingham, who's
out campaigning for an airport in Mirpur.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. He took to social media to voice his support for the project in the district of Mirpur, which is within the disputed Kashmir region administered by Pakistan. He said, there has been a long-standing promise for an international airport here, which has yet to be met. This causes significant issues to a number of my constituents who are having to drive for over 3 hours to get to the nearest airport in Pakistan.
Did you see the letter that he wrote on the House of Commons paper with them all signing up to it?
Oh, yeah.
What on earth has this got to do with his job?
And he's been taking it in the neck. Robert Jenrick's going to be talking to us later on in the show, and I'm sure he's going to have something to say about it, because a lot of Tory MPs have said, look, just look after your own constituency,
just look after
which
your own
apparently at the moment is overrun with rats, is filthy, there's a bin strike going on, it's disgusting.
Well, it feels very similar to Angela Rayner being out in Ethiopia last week.
Ethiopia.
I mean, how much money, how many thousands of pounds is all of this campaigning abroad for bizarre,
Also, if people who live in Birmingham also go to Pakistan for long periods of time and have to drive for a long time to get to an airport, I'm sorry, I don't care. I don't care. What's the point?
How many people? How on earth does this affect the majority of Birmingham constituents who elected this guy, apparently?
Yeah.
And how much is this costing us all? I mean, I imagine there's been quite a lot of delegations out there to look around.
Oh, well, he would have taken plenty of trips, I'm sure. No question at all. Morning, Mike, says Daniel in Surrey. The Sussex brand, and I say that very loosely, was over when the Oprah interview was aired. Unfortunately, everything they touch now turns to doo-doo. You'd think his dad would step in, give some advice, and generally put an arm around him. But, of course, he doesn't.
Well, why do you think King Charles has kept a very, very wide berth? I mean, they don't comment, obviously, but King Charles has shown, and same with William, shown absolutely no inclination to make any kind of, to heal the rift with Harry, because I think they see how toxic that is.
Well, because they know that anything they say to him is likely to end up either in a book,
or
an
on
interview,
TV.
Or on
And what have
on
we
TV.
seen in the last few weeks from Meghan? This endless rolling out and re-rolling out and failed launches of her lifestyle brand, and then a clothing brand, and the honey and jam being sent around it. All of this, and now this damaging stuff.
Well, there's a
comes
good
out.
piece in the Mail today by Richard Kay, who used to know his his mother terribly well. Harry now faces an awful question: does his royal brand actually have any kind of future? And I think that's a good question. Here's Meghan taking the mickey out of the Queen. You might remember this one from the first Harry and Meghan Netflix show.
I remember in the car and driving up, and he said, "You know how to curtsy, right?" And I just thought it was a joke. Like, I curtsied as though I was like... Pleasure to meet you, Your Majesty. Like, was that okay? It was so intense.
He looks so embarrassed.
He looks so embarrassed, and it's just... And she's such a liar as well. She's such a drama queen. It's always about her.
Right.
But that kind of stuff, that kind of protocol stuff, usually people are taken through it anyway.
Yeah.
They're shown how to do a little... They just do a little bob. It's not
Right.
this ridiculous thing. It's just embarrassing.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, when you start sort of poking fun at the Queen... That's when British people say, actually, you know, just get out.
Yeah, exactly.
Waste of space.
No, thanks very much indeed.
No.
Yeah, well, it is the 5th anniversary of Brexit, probably the greatest thing that ever happened to the royal family.
We should have a national celebration. If we can celebrate Eid, and we can celebrate Brexit, why can't we celebrate Megxit?
I think we should.
Great day.
Very good idea. Yeah, what should we do to celebrate Megxit? Maybe we could make some funny faces.
Burn some effigies?
Burn some effigies.
Sorry, that's a bit violent.
That might be... Yeah, you might have the police round. Police will be round for that. 6:45. Coming up, we'll talk about the Labour MP who wants you to pay for a dog, amongst other things. Plus, much, much more besides. Rachel Reeves, by the way, is fighting parents from private schools who want to try and keep the schools able to teach their special needs children. Guess what she's done? She's hired a load of King's Councils, very expensive King's Councils, very expensive and very good, who are all educated, guess where? In private school. This is Talk.
I was on the 24th, 25th floor, and one of the cleaners of the building said, "Run now, go, go, go." And, you know, debris was falling. It was very scary. I mean, when you're at that height, you actually start to think, am I going to get down in time? So it was very scary. I ran to the bottom, to the ground floor, like thousands of others. And it was just such a strange thing to happen, because these things happen in the region, in other countries, in other states, in other territories. I mean, if you look at Taiwan, Hong Kong, in China, earthquakes are fairly common, but in Thailand, certainly Bangkok, it's not.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:48. I'm Mike Graham. Emma Wolf is here. One here from Kevin, who says, Mike, it's simple. All these brains in one room, but will not come up with a simple solution that will work overnight to stop the boats. It's simple. Just return them to where they set off from on arrival and stop people smuggling overnight. Yeah, you would think it was that simple, but it didn't seem to be for some reason. Emma, let's talk about a couple of the other stories in the papers this morning. The morning after pill. Apparently, you can get it for free if it's an emergency, which I presumed it's meant to be anyway. But now they say now everybody can get it for free instead of paying £30 for it in a pharmacy. This was their contribution, Labour, to Mother's Day.
OK, trust me, most pharmacists will hand this out for free.
Right.
I'm not even sure what I think about this free condoms, free morning after pills thing being anyway handed out, because...
I don't see why it should be free.
I'm not really sure. I mean, really, sex is meant to be like a sort of, I don't know, a leisure or a pastime thing. Why are people being, you know, why do we have to do all that?
Why are the taxpayers subsidising it would be my question.
Well, that's the more serious point. Pharmacies are massively having to cut back. Right, 93% of them are going to have to cut back on their home delivery, which actually, by the way, delivers essential medicine to older people, people who can't leave the house. So they're cutting back on that. They're cutting back on opening hours. This all comes out of their budget. And yet they're handing out the morning after pill. I also think for young girls who are not really being responsible, I think it encourages this sense of, oh, it doesn't really matter.
It's a sort of throwaway society.
It doesn't matter because you can get the morning after pill afterwards. Rather than thinking, I better be careful, oh, it's an emergency, I need the morning after pill, which is valid and which I think people should pay £5 for or something.
I don't think it needs to be 30. It shouldn't be free.
No,
that's for
I don't think it should be handed out like this.
No, it's a
and
bad
you know,
idea.
when we don't have money, why are we spending money on things like this?
Yeah, I mean, Wes Streeting announced that it was this great kind of,
bizarre
freedom accessing moment for the women of this country, but it doesn't seem to be.
Most women I know were thinking, well, that's a bit odd.
Exactly right. I'll tell you what's going to surprise you. The Times has done this today, and this is fun. We've got a couple of videos to play you because it turns out that going to the office is now something that people make TikTok influencer videos about. It might be a good thing, actually, and I'm not entirely against it, but they're trying to encourage people to go back to offices. But some people who have started doing it are so unused to being in an office that they've actually started filming themselves and their routine. I said to the guys this morning when I came in, maybe I should film my routine in the morning when I come in at 4:20, but I'm not sure it'd be very pretty, has to be said. Have we got one of these? I think we've got one of them going to the office. Have a look.
If you ever wondered what a social media /influencer /PR girly does day to day, that's not all the exciting bits that we love to post on social media, here is the vlog for you. So this is a standard office day in my life. I arrive at the office. My favourite desk was there. If hot desking girlies will know, when your favourite desk isn't there, it just ruins your day. Start the day off by responding to some emails because a lot of emails come in after 5 p.m. from talent and talent agents. And then I'm planning out my day. I don't know why I look so stressed here, but clearly the 9 a.m. was a stressful one.
Oh dear.
9 a.m. Diddums.
Hasn't quite got it. Yeah, that'll be what, 2.5 hours from now.
No, this is the problem, right? They're just going to mess around in offices, filming themselves. I mean, she's an influencer, right? She's filming herself going into her office.
Yes.
It's a completely empty office, sitting down at a desk with a laptop,
pretending to work.
Pretending to answer emails.
Well, being a PR, they don't really do any work anyway.
Of course
but I
they
mean,
don't.
the thing is that they've also got people talking about when they apply for jobs, if they are asked to possibly do any work in an office, they're asking questions like, is there
What's an office?
Is there an annual party, right? What sort of canteen facilities are there? All perfectly valid. I mean, if it gets people back into an office, I'm all for it. But I'm not sure it's going to do that. I think it's just going to create yet another kind
But none of that is about work.
No.
Not actually, these are not people who are going into a grimy council office in Birmingham and dealing with the rats and the bins, is it? This
Sometimes
is about...
somebody might come up to you and say you're not doing a very good job.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God,
anxiety,
no, I can't have
harassment.
That. Exactly right. Crikey.
Hurty feelings.
I know. Let's talk about the transphobic toddler. Possibly, there could be one of the favourite stories of the week. This. A toddler has been suspended from nursery after being accused of being transphobic or possibly homophobic. It doesn't say how old the toddler is, I don't think.
They're 3 or 4.
Yeah.
They said 3 or 4.
Yeah.
This is so ridiculous, and I was saying to you, Mike, before the show, I really wish this was my child, my 4-year-old, because I would be kicking off everywhere. I would be dragging them through the courts. This is absolutely ludicrous. Sex education, talk of gender identity, all of that stuff, gender ideology, has no place in early years, certainly not in nurseries or the first year reception or in year 1 or 2. It's absolutely ludicrous that any toddler who makes a comment about a boy being a girl or a girl, apparently he was homophobic, they were homophobic. No child, no young child should be labelled transphobic. It does not exist.
No.
They're not trans, they're just saying things.
Yeah, right.
They're exploring the world.
Exactly.
But schools are increasingly asking very young children things like, what do you not like about being a boy? What do you not like about being a girl? Getting them to question
actually shoving them into
all
areas.
this stuff. I don't think sex education, even that, which is a different thing to gender ideology, sex education shouldn't really be introduced until 12, 13. Or if people are troubled, if they need support, if young children are questioning something or other and they need specific support. But you don't go in there and start telling 3 and 4-year-olds that a girl can be a boy can be a cat, a dinosaur can be a... all of this stuff is very confusing.
I mean, people used to say if a child under a certain age, say under 10, mentioned anything about sex, it was probably a red flag to what was going on in their home. because, why would you be talking to children that young about sexual activity?
Exactly.
And normally speaking, if any child said anything of a sexual nature, the teachers would be alarmed and be worried about what was going on, in their home life.
But I think
according to these, let me just tell you these statistics. 94 pupils at state primary schools were suspended or permanently excluded for transphobia and homophobia in 22-23. These included 10 pupils from year 1 and 3 from year 2, where the maximum age is 7.
That's very young.
Ridiculous.
Year 1 and year 2.
Yeah.
And this whole transphobia, trans world is deeply, deeply confusing for adults, let alone for children.
Right.
Children have no place in this.
Well, even Keir Starmer's confused by it because he doesn't think that...
He doesn't know what a woman is.
Every woman's got a penis. He thinks there are some women that don't have one.
And men can have babies, of course.
Of course, absolutely right. Men and women can also charge expenses if they're MPs. How about this? Taiwo Awatimi is a government whip who is helping to get £5 billion worth of cuts to disability benefits through Parliament. She was revealed at the weekend to be using taxpayers' cash to pay pet rent so she can live with her cockapoo dog in London.
Bella.
Bella, £900 a year extra in rent so her pet pooch Bella can live with her. What on earth is she thinking?
Okay, she is on nearly 94,000. And I don't know, Mike, do government whips, I assume that they get a sort of ministerial top-up?
They may
more?
well do. I wouldn't be surprised.
So her basic, she's an MP, her basic will be nearly £94,000 a year.
Yeah.
And her landlord has put this surcharge on because maybe, I don't know about animals, but maybe some animals do... Well, anyway, it's his rule.
Landlords will sometimes charge you extra if you want to have a pet. Yeah.
There is a surcharge. Yeah. And guess what? She's been putting it on the taxpayer. The thing is, it's not illegal. They're allowed to do this.
Yes.
The difference is here, and I'm not defending her, but she revealed it.
Yes.
What's the word?
She put it into her members'
She
list.
itemised it on her claim.
Yeah.
But lots of other MPs have been doing the same thing, but it's as part of their rent.
But this is where Starmer...
Why does she need a second home?
I know.
Why does she need her dog down here?
I know. But this is the point about Starmer when he said about the Lord Ali scandal back in the summer. Well, I've declared it. So therefore, there's nothing. I've done everything within the rules. No, it's a bad look. You shouldn't be taking freebies. And even Rachel Reeves last week said, "I'm not going to take any more freebies."
After her gig.
After her,
Sabrina
Carpenter tickets. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
I think the expenses thing really needs to be overhauled. I mean, there are a lot of MPs who even claim second home, and that's rent, everything.
Yeah.
On places that you and I would get on a train and travel to a couple of times a week, we'd get on a train, go there, and go back.
I'm not picking on him, but James Cleverly, when he was on with me some weeks ago, I said to him, "What about all these MPs who claim heating allowance for their second home?" And he sort of started to look a bit shifty, and it turned out he'd done it as well. And he lives in Essex. He's an Essex MP.
And there are lots of people
you shouldn't be allowed
that
to
commute
pay,
into London.
Yeah, and you shouldn't be allowed to pay. If you want to take the odd night in a hotel because you have to work late, that's fine. That doesn't entitle you to have a second home, which you buy, which we help you to pay for, and which you then profit on. That's where it's wrong.
Of course it's wrong. Of course it's wrong. And then we have things like pet rent, and goodness knows what else people are claiming for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we only know about this because she did declare it.
Yeah.
But I'd love to know what government whips are paid, because she could... Mike, the point is, she could afford to pay that.
Yes.
If she wants Bella the cockapoo with her, she can afford to pay for it.
Exactly, and the system allows them to do it. So, as you say, they're not necessarily doing anything illegal, but they shouldn't be allowed to do it. One final one, let's talk about NHS once again. There's a story that came out just overnight. Health chiefs have spent almost £80 million on language services and translation services since 2020 for patients who don't speak English. Why?
Why?
Is my first question.
I know, it's absolutely shocking. I do think there should be some kind of language requirement, or at least some
90 different
kind
languages.
Yeah, well, that is ludicrous.
I mean, if you turn up and you don't speak the language, then it's tough. I mean, when we go overseas and we go on holiday and take the kids to hospital, you manage to do it. It's
or
not
if you've
easy.
just arrived here and you've been given a free phone by the government, then you Google the word that you need to Google about, "I've got a rash on my back, doctor." I mean, really, £80 million.
I know.
Probably more.
Probably more.
When the NHS is apparently cash-strapped.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's get a quick voice note from Sue on Harry and Meghan.
Morning, Mike. Sue here from Farncombe. Just to say, that is when I lost all respect for Harry. I cannot believe how he's treated his family. Yes, you are the spare, just like Princess Margaret was. Deal with it. Grow up. And as for that one-time actress, me. Harry, wake up.
Harry! Harry! Harry, we're in the papers again. She's not going to be happy, is she?
She's not going to be happy about this.
I mean, his life's going to be a misery.
I keep saying, I give that marriage another year at max, but I don't think they are heading for...
I used to say, do you remember when they first lived in LA and they had this big fence put up around the house? And I said, no, this is not to keep out the paparazzi, it's to keep him in. Because he actually wants to escape and get over the fence and get back to where...
He's desperate to come. I mean, he comes back to this country all the time and never brings her.
No, because it's dangerous for her.
Too dangerous. But they can go around Colombia.
Oh, yeah, that
was
problem.
fine.
Chris says, morning, Mike. My son is 15 and got a detention for stating that migrants are being put up in hotels. His teacher said it's a media lie, and if he didn't take it back, he'd get detention. I'm so proud he's still in the side of common sense and accepted his punishment. Obviously, I rang and put the school in their place. Teachers are now activists. Well, you probably get the cops round now, Chris, you know, for ringing the police, for ringing your teachers and complaining. Why did you get a detention for saying migrants are being put up in hotels, which is true? Emma Wolf, thank you very much indeed. I'm Mike Graham. Isabel Oakeshott, coming next. This is Talk.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so that we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sent his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It is coming up to 3 minutes past 7. The sun is now up. You know, obviously due to what we discussed over the weekend, the time's changing and British summertime now becoming a thing. It was still dark when we started the show, but don't worry, as of course you would expect, you know, light is now beginning to shine on the world of common sense. The headquarters, indeed, of common sense, because this is Morning Glory, the one place where you get it. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Coming up in this hour, Isabel Oakeshott joins us, Talk's international editor. Kinsey Schofield is going to be here telling us It's all about Prince Harry, who's been accused of bullying and harassment. And also Maxie Allen, the Times radio producer, who was, of course, one of the couple who were basically arrested wrongfully by the police, 6 of whom turned up at their front door because they'd had some toing and froing and some exchanges of views with the school where their children go in Hertfordshire. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Also, we'll be talking about the police, who appear to be now going completely and utterly insane and absolutely outliving any part of what their remit is supposed to be by just going in madly in with loads and loads of people and extreme uses of force. In one case, against a meeting in a Quaker meeting house, believe it or not, over the course of the weekend. We're going to talk as well about ethnic minorities getting prioritised for bail. We're also going to talk about Yvette Cooper, who yesterday was ordering all kinds of things to happen over the migrant crisis. She says she's going to have a border security summit today. She's also thinking about possibly sending migrants to a third country. I wonder where we've heard that before. And also, of course, we'll be talking about a great many other things, including ridiculous Labour MPs who want to build an airport in Kashmir in Pakistan, and another one who wants you to pay for a dog. You would think everything was fine and dandy in the garden in Parliament, wouldn't you? Well, it bloody well isn't. It's 4 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Neil says 40 dignitaries meeting the Prime Minister to discuss border security. Does that translate to 40 countries meeting the Prime Minister to see how much money they can screw Starmer and the British taxpayer out of? Well, that will probably be the result. I saw, by the way, at the weekend that David Lammy had pledged another £10 million to Myanmar to help them with their recovery from the earthquake. And I'm sure that that's a very nice thing to do. But can we afford to do it at this moment in time? I'm not sure we can. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note from Mick on the transphobic toddler.
Good morning, Mike. Mick from Northampton here. Any teacher, substitute teacher, headmaster, whatever, that brings trans ideology into schools before they are 13 should be sacked and have their qualifications taken away from them.
Absolutely right. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, the idea of a transphobic toddler, I've got this vision in my head of this kind of, kid with bother boots on, walking around braces, punching everyone. Yeah, all right. I'm not having it. It's just ridiculous. Isabel Oakeshot's here, Talks International editor. Isabel, very good morning to you.
Morning. I'm kind of encouraged by some vague signs of common sense from the government this morning. I'm not talking about the summit, which I'm sure we'll come to, because I think that is a load of absolute nonsense. Yeah. But this Shabina Mahmood, Justice Secretary, move to introduce emergency legislation to try to, as I think one of the papers this morning has put it, put a surgical block on two-tier justice and sentencing, is actually an encouraging sign, and quite surprising, actually. Shows how worried they are.
Well, it is an encouraging sign, but I'm not sure that they've not got themselves into this entirely by their own hand, because Shabana Mahmood, we were told at the time, didn't have any idea that this sentencing review panel was going to come up with this idea, right? When in fact that was incorrect, because she had one of her oppos from her department sitting in on the meeting when they decided to do it. And then we then get the next sort of manoeuvre, which was her saying they can't, you mustn't do it, we're going to stop you doing it. And the judge is just kind of sticking 2 fingers up and saying, well, we're going to do it anyway. It was put to me today, since Keir Starmer was able to do away with NHS England, which is a quango, why can't he just do away with the Sentencing Commission as well?
Well, I agree with that. I mean, I think if I were in charge or you were in charge, Mike, that's exactly what we'd do. We'd just scrap the quango. It would take legislation to do that, I think. But if they can rush the other legislation through in a day, presumably they could rush through we're just axing you law in a day, and then you just start again. I don't know why actually you need a sentencing council, because surely that's what MPs are for. The guidelines should be pretty clear, or the law itself should be pretty clear on how things work. But in the absence of that, I think we should just on occasion give them a little teensy bit of a benefit of the doubt, and maybe this will come to something. Obviously, I'm fundamentally sceptical, but what I think it does show is just how rattled they are about where they stand at this point, the Labour Party and this Labour administration. Because there is a very widespread perception now of two-tier justice, and we keep seeing illustrations of it, and they know that that is a big political problem. And now, even though it's all their own fault, they're trying to do something about it.
Yeah, and we see a secondary portion of this story as well on the front page of the Telegraph this morning, where they're saying that ethnic minority criminal suspects are now going to be prioritised, or are already being prioritised, for being given bail. And again, it seems to stem from this idea that, you know, these people are somehow disadvantaged in the system, and so in order to make it more equal, they'll punish the wrong people.
I mean, this is just absolutely disgraceful, and you know, people hate it. They absolutely hate it. They feel that there is a fundamental, you know, lack of fair play here. What on earth is any government doing in our country, disadvantaging our own people? It doesn't make any sense at all, and it's politically disastrous.
Yeah, it really is. And again, it shows you, does it not, how out of touch the judiciary is in this country. I mean, on Plank of the Week last week, we were talking about a whole series of different stories, and I said, you know, we might have to do a special Plank of the Week edition just on the judiciary, because it seems to be, from the immigration panels to the High Court to any number of sentencing judges that are involved in criminal courts all over, up and down the land, in Crown courts as well. You know, there's an example practically every day now of something that is not done right.
Couldn't agree with you more, and let's definitely do that special edition, and let's make sure that they are named and shamed, which we know they really dislike. These judges, they hate it.
Yeah.
If I were on Plank of the Week for that edition, I know who I'd be nominating and who I think would win it, and that is Lady Susan Carr.
Yes.
That pompous, she's the most senior judge in England, and she was the one that had a hissy fit at the idea that her colleagues would be identified and criticised over their judgments. I mean, this has become such a problem. It's an absolute rot at the heart of our system, that the judges are consistently interpreting the law in a way that is anti the interests of, you know, the national interest.
Right. And she even had the temerity to criticise the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition when they were having a conversation, quite rightly, about that part of the law that was allowing a family from Gaza to come to Britain under rules which were originally instigated to help people from Ukraine.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, and I've written this before, I think that we're approaching a point where if the judges and the immigration lawyers continue to act in this way, voters are going to want to have some kind of recourse. And, you know, we know in America, for example, that the top judges and the top figures in the judicial system actually are elected. And hasn't been part of our system previously. But if this goes on, people are going to want to have a way of getting rid of these judges.
Yes. They really will, and I mean, they're digging their own graves in a way, because as long as they keep holding up this great sort of, we can't have the administrative arm of the court of the state investigating the judicial arm of the state. Well, that's where it's going to end up if they carry on like this. Yeah,
absolutely, it will do. So let's see what she brings in, and is it worth the paper it's written on, the old Mahmood. But she's really on the back foot with this. Yeah. Do you remember when all this first came out, she wrote to the Sentencing Council expressing, I think, what she called her displeasure? Yes. Well, the British people are feeling an awful lot more strongly about it.
Well, they are. And I'll tell you something else that wound me up over the weekend, because it again was proof of positive of things that we've been saying here on this show and the Independent Republic for many, many years, which is that something like 10,000 asylum seekers who arrived legally in the UK after being granted work or student visas are now living in taxpayer-funded hotels and dispersal accommodations, because it now turns out that all of these people who are given the right to enter this country as a student or on a particular work visa are basically overstaying the visa. And they now make up 40,000, something like 40% rather, of all asylum claimants. So yes, the small boats are a problem. Yes, the illegal migrants are a problem. But these are also a big problem.
Massive problem. And it's absolutely ridiculous. You can't come into our country on one basis and stay a while pretending to be a student or actually doing a token effort course. And I know how this stuff works. You only have to put a deposit down. for these courses in order to get your visa to come and be a student, and it can be just a few £100s. There's no actual check or obligation to turn up for the course or pay the balance. So there are plenty of little colleges and even bigger institutions that are making a pretty penny off the back of all these applications, and no, they're never actually going to have to provide the for the number of students, supposed students who are going to sit the courses. It's just a mechanism to get into our country, and then the idea that you could then just translate that into, oh well, I've been here for a while, supposedly studying, I don't know, photography or bead counting, and actually now I've just realised that I'm a bit scared to go home, and I might be persecuted. That should be an instant disqualification. You can't have multiple grounds on which you're coming.
No, but I mean, the amazing thing is that Yvette Cooper seems to have just discovered this, which we've obviously known for a long time, in the same way that the National Crime Agency has apparently discovered after many years of it, they think there might be some strange things going on in those Turkish barber shops up and down the country. They've decided that, oh my goodness me, there could be some money laundering and drug smuggling going on there. Really? How shocking is that?
I mean, these places are a complete scandal. Sometimes you'll see 4 or 5 barbershops on one street. They're all staffed by people who very much look like they weren't originally from our country, let's put it that way. And it's so obvious they're up to no good. How hard can it be to follow the money? These are money laundering. Of course, not all of them.
Well, normally speaking, there's a lot of men sitting inside these places, no customers, and a very large gleaming AMG Mercedes sitting outside, which is the sort of the company car.
They're money laundering operations. They are absolutely integral to the whole kind of crime mafia, and there are certain countries that are strongly associated with that. Exactly. They are Albania, Bulgaria, and Romania. These are Eastern European primarily. And while they're at it, perhaps the police might want to have a look at the car washes, because again, those are heavily run by.
Well, I can see your car wash and a Turkish barber and raise you the latest scam, which was pointed out to me the other day. And I've done a little bit of digging into this, and it turns out to be true. Have a look around the many different towns in this country where cosmetic dentist offices are opening up, and the reason why they're becoming very popular with the money launderers is you can launder a lot more money through a cosmetic dentistry than you can through a barber shop. So that's the next level up.
Because the prices can be a lot higher. I mean, a new set of gnashers, I suppose, will cost thousands of pounds.
Oh yeah, this is the thing.
Good device.
Yeah, it is a very good one. But don't worry, because Yvette Cooper's holding a border security summit today, Isabel, so I'm sure this is going to be good. Have a look at what she told Sky News.
Now bringing in new counter-terror style powers to tackle the criminal gangs, and today and tomorrow we will be bringing together this unprecedented border security and organised immigration crime summit that will be bringing over 40 countries, interior ministers and law enforcement for all over the world, because this is a criminal industry, global criminal industry, that is worth billions of pounds of exploitation, dangerous crimes that they are committing, and we need that international cooperation.
And what does Keir Starmer think of that idea?
To smash the people smuggling gangs.
Sorry, I can't resist playing that. What the hell good is this going to do?
I don't know how she can sit there and say that with a straight face. It is just beyond embarrassing, isn't it? Are you seriously telling me that we are going to solve this problem by holding a round table event with 40 representative countries? What? I mean, international cooperation has manifestly failed to this point. She's talking about this summit being unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean, it's a summit.
Unprecedented is the level of complete and utter incompetence on display from this government, as literally thousands of people have come in just this year. And since the Labour Party supposedly started smashing the vile people smuggling gangs, it's been tens of thousands of people that have come across. When are they going to grasp the fact that the only way to stop this is introducing a really powerful deterrent? So either you pick up the boats safely and send them back to France, or when people get to this side of the channel, you detain them, and you detain them until they are ready to be deported. And I'm not hearing any of this nonsense about, we can't do that because some of them are stateless. Well, they'll pretty soon find out where they're from and reveal where they're from if they're threatened with being sent to some kind of labour camp. I'm afraid where we're at, we're going to have to start playing really hardball.
Exactly, and I think they could learn a bit from America on this one as well. But only in Britain would they think that the answer to thousands and thousands of people coming to this country illegally is to bring a load more people in to have a summit about it. You know, many of whom will probably end up staying. But let's talk finally about what they're really scared of in Labour, and it would appear to be the Reform Party, because I keep seeing Wes Streeting tweeting about once every 5 minutes that Nigel Farage wants to sell off the NHS. He wants you to pay for your appendix being removed. You know, every single time you turn around, there's another cabinet member having a go at reform. They just can't seem to leave them alone, can they?
Well, I've read Keir Starmer's article in a newspaper today, which is about his meeting on immigration, and he talks about parties on the fringe of politics offering empty solutions, and I think that's clearly meant to be about Reform UK. I would say in his dreams on that one, the party's currently polling either first or second in pretty much every opinion poll. And I was at the rally on Friday night in Birmingham. Now, it was quite late on Friday evening, so it wouldn't have made a lot of the mainstream media just because deadlines on a Friday are earlier. But it was a truly jaw-dropping event, and I think that should have sent shudders down the spine, not just of Labour, but of the Tory party. They had JCB, that very, very iconic British brand, owned by Lord Bamford, who's a huge Tory donor, as a centrepiece of the rally. So yes, they're rattled, and your angle there on health is really interesting, because actually Reform hasn't actually come out with a very detailed health policy since the general election. It won't be dismantling the NHS, and I think by the time we get to the next election, setting aside which party is proposing what, I think that the cult of the NHS will very much have dissipated. The NHS in its current form is manifestly failing people. It is not providing consistently the level of care that people are entitled to expect, given how...
Oh, we've just lost Isabel there. Listen, I think you're absolutely right. Isabel, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Just a slightly dodgy connection at the end there. We've had, of course, Kemi Badenoch in last week on this very show. We're going to be speaking to Nigel Farage this week. We've also invited Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, and, of course, Ed Davey in relation to the local council elections, which are going on in May. It's 21 minutes past 7. We've got loads more to do. The schools, says Margaret in Yorkshire, should return to what they were set up for, teaching children to write, spell, maths and science and read. Go back to basic education. Well, that would be good. That would be very good. But of course, unfortunately, what we have instead is an ideologically driven bunch of Marxists who want to change the curriculum, who want to treat children as if they are sort of ideologues who can be trained to hate the right and hate the Daily Mail and hate anything to do with Tories and reform, and make sure that they all believe in climate change and LGBTQ plus blah whatever. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. How can you have a transphobic toddler? All right, leave me alone. It's 21 minutes past 7.
The disaster of Disney's remake of Snow White. There it is, Rachel Zegler Not particularly Snow White, is she? Go woke, you go broke. This is a movie that cost $283 million to make in its first weekend, last weekend at the box office in America. It's brought in a feeble $43 million. $43 million. You would have made Disney $200 million in your first weekend, maybe $300 million, if you'd have just stuck to the traditional story.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 23 minutes past 7. It's a beautiful morning out there, so if you're not up and you're not at them yet, you may well wish to be. Some people are on Easter holidays already, some people are not, but there's a lot going on today. We've got an awful lot of stories, including, of course, the 5th anniversary of Megxit. And as if to commemorate it themselves, Harry and Meghan have got themselves on quite a few of the front pages, but in a good way, I'm afraid. The front page of The Sun says, "Chuckered under the bus by Harry, the Polo fundraiser hijacked for Netflix." This is, of course, Dr. Sophie Chandorkar, head of the old charity Sentebale, who's been giving all sorts of interviews around and about over the course of the last few days, talking about how she was bullied, harassed, and basically tried to be influenced by Harry in defending Meghan. But let's have a look back to some of the things that have happened over the last 5 years, as we're going to do throughout the course of the show. This was one of my favourites, South Park taking the mickey.
We just want to be normal people. All this attention is so hard. Isn't it true, sir, that your questionable wife has her own TV show and hangs out with celebrities and does fashion magazines? What are you suggesting? Well, I just think some people might say that your Instagram-loving wife actually doesn't want her privacy. How dare you, sir? My Instagram-loving wife has always wanted her privacy. And you know what else? To hell with Canada. We are leaving. We'll go find some quiet place where we can be normal people. Come on, wife. We want privacy. We want privacy. We want privacy.
It totally captured the zeitgeist, I think you'll find, at the time. Kinsey Schofield is with us. Who better to tell us about what is going on, the latest from the House of Montecito. Kinsey, very good morning to you.
The South Park episode will live in history as probably the moment that American media turned on those two, but also where we all just kind of woke up and went, oh, wait, this is hitting a little too close to home.
Yeah. Absolutely right. It was absolutely spot on, though, wasn't it? Because there's nothing worse than them declaring how much privacy they want shortly before doing yet another podcast, yet another Netflix series, more appearances on various TV company network shows. But this story today that we're seeing on the front page of the Mail and the Sun, bullying at scale. I mean, incredible accusations being levelled at Harry, not at Meghan this time, but actually at Harry for bullying, harassment, resigning from his 540-strong person charity without a proper explanation. It's quite remarkable stuff.
Yes, before I answer, I have to just confirm that you're so right. And remember on South Park where they refer to Meghan as an influencer. And they were definitely insulting her. And here we are today. So Prince Harry is being accused of doing exactly what he accused almost 5 years ago, the British royal family of doing, which is weaponizing the media against his enemy, which in this case is Dr. Sophie. Dr. Sophie blasted the decline in the Sussex's brand, saying in an interview with the Financial Times, the #1 risk for this organization was the toxicity of its lead patron's brand, and accused Harry of trying to eject her through this bullying and unleashing the quote-unquote Sussex machine, which I feel like we all understand what she means when she says that. But she did say when she looked over the charity's finances in July of 2023, she realized that people were ducking and getting out of there when they realized that Prince Harry was no longer going to be as involved in the British royal family. Like, what was his value when he left the royal family? Also, all of the drama that they attracted, they didn't want to be associated with it anymore. So she says, I saw a decline in donations because of their actions.
Interesting. And that's the first time really that anybody's said that, isn't it? And it's clear from what you and I have spoken about for the last couple of years that that's what's been going on, because they have lost credibility, they have lost support, and she has become a more and more kind of, I would say, I suppose, isolated figure. I mean, even her latest show, the Love Meghan show, has nobody on it that is of any import whatsoever. She couldn't get anybody else to appear on it with her.
Where was Tyler Perry? Where was Oprah Winfrey? I mean, think about the favor Meghan Markle did for Oprah Winfrey when she sat down with her for that exclusive. Think about how livid Spotify and Netflix were when Oprah Winfrey got all of those details. By the time that story gets to Netflix and Spotify, Harry and Meghan have backtracked. They're saying it's the press that said that there was a royal racist, not them. So think about how resentful, if we're looking at this 5-year mark, Netflix and Spotify were after the Oprah Winfrey sit down. And Oprah can't even spend a day in Montecito at some random person's house while Meghan Markle tosses one bag of pretzels into another. I mean, it's the least she could do. I know she's on Ozempic, but it's the least they could have made the bath salts together.
You would have thought that she could have made a little cameo. I mean, even like the one that Meghan makes on Gwyneth Paltrow's little feed. You know, they've got nothing else to do, because what you see is all of these women sitting around. They're so rich that they literally have to find things to occupy their day. Otherwise, presumably, all they would do is shout at their husbands.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, what are the odds that they're actually really doing half of that stuff? You're right. It was a stretch. It was a painful stretch. I don't believe that Meghan has a lot of A-listers that want to associate with them, because you are who you associate with, and Harry and Meghan attract a lot of negative attention.
They really do. Let's have an actual look at what Sophie Chandorka said over the weekend here, because it's quite damning.
At some point on Tuesday, Prince Harry authorized the release of a damaging piece of news to the outside world without informing me, or my country directors, or my executive director. And can you imagine what that attack has done for me, on me, and the 540 individuals in the Sentebale organizations and their family? That is an example of harassment and bullying at scale. And so if the world didn't want to believe that there's such a thing as bullying, this unleashing of the Sussex machine on me and the 540 employees at Sentebale who received this and have had to defend it.
And this is a woman who is talking without fear or favour, it would seem. I mean, I'm wondering, a couple of people yesterday were asking me whether Harry would be getting his lawyers involved, as he likes to do. I think he'll probably stay quite well away from this one. And secondly, one of the things that she claimed is that basically, you know, he wanted to bring this polo. We all remember the polo clip. We'll find it later on in the show, where she was kind of pushing this woman out of the way. She turned up. She threatened not to turn up at first. Harry said he wanted to bring a Netflix crew. They said he couldn't. You know, I mean, it's clear what's been going on here, and finally somebody's pulling the plug on it and telling the truth.
Right. No, and this is a woman that worked in-house for Meta as counsel, worked for JP Morgan. Those are not the kinds of corporations that Prince Harry, Nepo baby, America's favorite Nepo baby, has on his resume. That's why I feel like you're seeing a woman that is so completely confident in her delivery, absolutely fearless. And she accuses Prince Harry of grandstanding and claiming he wants to destroy the charity so he can later return as its savior. She also told Trevor Phillips she has receipts to back up her accusations and will not be pushed around. But anybody that's worked within a charity, and I know you have too, whether it's, you know, volunteering your time or being a spokesperson, charities are really hard to navigate. And Prince Harry deciding 30 days out that he's going to bring a commercial entity in, Netflix, that wreaks havoc. Now this fundraiser has turned upside down. And on top of that, in comes Meghan Markle and Serena Williams. Think about the security that involves. Think about that, you know, and she talked about the choreography on the stage, how it was all messed up because now there's this other body. They are just so self-consumed, worried about their image, worried about executing what they need to execute. What, you want to dirty up Sentebale's name on this polo show that was absolutely destroyed by critics being filthy and worthless?
I know. Unbelievable stuff. Kinsey, great to talk to you. We've got to run. We're a bit tight scheduled this morning. Royal commentator Kinsey Schofield reporting in from California there, where things just go from bad to worse on the 5th anniversary of Megxit. Things go from bad to worse for the police in this country. Coming up, we're going to speak to Maxie Allen, Times radio producer, who was one of 2 parents who were assailed by 6 police officers at their own home, then taken away by the police, arrested, kept in a cell for 8 hours and frightened within an inch of their lives, all because they'd written a few emails and said a few things on a WhatsApp group about the school and the way that they were handling their children. Absolutely extraordinary story. You know about it, but wait till you hear the next bit. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:34. I'm Mike Graham, with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock when it's time for Julie Hartley-Brewer. The sun is up. The sun is beautiful out there. For a lot of people, the school holidays have begun. Some people have still got a few days to go. But, you know, what you can be sure of is that there is never a dull moment here right now in Morning Glory and on the home of common sense, because there's an awful lot of people behaving as if they've never heard of common sense. We're going to talk now to Maxie Allen, Times Radio producer, who's had a very busy weekend. He and his wife Rosalind Levine were arrested by the police, as you probably have heard, unless you've been living under a rock, for no good reason. They were taken into custody, held for 8 hours. 6 police officers turned up at their front door in Hertfordshire as a result of some toing and froing and some things that were said on emails and some conversations on WhatsApp groups, none of which were in any way requiring police intervention. Maxie, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Mike.
Good to see you. I mean, I'm sorry to continue your very busy weekend, because I'm sure you could probably do with a bit of respite from it. But there's now intervention from Oliver Dowden, the former chairman of the Tory party, who's saying on the front page of the Times today that basically he's astonished that not only were you two arrested, but there were threats made apparently to elected officials as well.
Yes, it's an extraordinary further layer to this story, and which was revealed in the Times yesterday evening. It comes from emails that I was copied into towards the end of December. And after the first time a police officer came to our property, he also then went to see a local county councillor who had separately from us also been contacting the school about these and other related issues. And essentially what the emails make clear is that the police constable was threatening a county councillor with criminal proceedings if she continued to do her job, which is to liaise with schools about what's happening. And he also told the county councillor to pass that warning on to Oliver Dowden, the local MP and former Deputy Prime Minister. So in a position where somehow a police constable is telling elected officials, including an MP, not to do their democratic job of deciding which casework they take on and how they do things. It is a very, obviously I was aware of this before from the emails, but as this has emerged, it's an extraordinary extra layer to it, because you can't help but wonder, why were Hertfordshire constabularies so sort of, I suppose, fixated with this particular issue. And I can't speculate as to why the officer did that, but the questions really are mounting for Hertfordshire police here.
They really are. And Yvette Cooper didn't really help yesterday. She appeared on various different TV shows and sort of failed to answer the question put to her, you know, are the police acting, ultra vires here? Are they really doing things that they shouldn't be doing? And she kind of rather mealy-mouthed kind of explained the fact that, well, they have operational independence and, you know, it's not for the government to tell the police how to do their jobs, but we are going to look seriously into some of these issues. You know, that's not really good enough from the government, is it? Surely they should be laying down the law, literally, to these police officers, because Hertfordshire's not, I mean, this is probably the most egregious, but it's not the only place where it's happening, where police officers seem to be incapable of using their brains to say, well, is this really necessary? I mean, anybody sensible would have looked at your situation and said, look, there is no need for the police to be involved here.
Well, I mean, I must stress that I never set out to be a poster boy for issues of free speech or policing. These are just things that happen to us.
Yeah, right.
And it was a story I couldn't leave untold. And I think the significance is really for others to interpret. I'm not a campaigner on this front. But, I mean, in fairness, Mike, I think you sort of understand why the Home Secretary has to speak in that tone, because officers do sometimes have to make very difficult decisions, and you have to maintain the morale of operational police. And there's bad headlines every couple of weeks, and that doesn't help the police's effectiveness. So I understand why politicians have to be quite careful in what they say. And she's not appraised of the particular facts of this case either. But I suppose one takeaway from this is that because there are increasingly stories such as this, there was one a few weeks ago about a police visit to a couple who posted about the Manchester MP's WhatsApp story,
Right.
that somewhere in this framework of the legislation of police policy, police operations, and also our kind of societal view of conversations and how we converse and what we say and what is legitimate discourse or not. The law around it hasn't caught up with the reality of the way we communicate to each other.
Right.
And it strikes me that in terms of conversations we have on WhatsApp groups or whatever, private conversations, can you control it? I don't think you can. It's like raining. And this is probably put the police into very difficult situations where on one hand they're meant to do this and then the other they get in trouble for doing it. It needs sorting out, and maybe we just need to make a decision: do it or don't do it. Have a clear understanding of when you should intervene and when you shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, because a WhatsApp group is effectively like a conversation in a pub. Happens to be just written down, doesn't it? And so,
that's always what I argued, and that was the part of this issue which I felt quite strongly about, because it occurred to me that a public authority, whether it's a school, a hospital, a local authority or whatever, should not be eavesdropping on private conversation. It is tantamount to opening letters. It is, I'll just intercept that letter and open it and see what your friend has said to you. It is exactly the same thing. And I don't think there's any justification for an authority to interfere in private correspondence unless the reason is really exceptional. For example, in evidence of a proper crime about to be committed, a child safeguarding issue.
Yes.
And I think, you could have that possibly emerge in a parents' WhatsApp group. But I think the bar has to be set very high indeed.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you were accused or arrested on suspicion of malicious communications, harassment and causing a nuisance on school property. And on the face of it, that all sounds quite serious. But what was the most serious thing you would say you actually said?
Well, I mean, bear in mind that when we were eventually interviewed by a detective, he didn't present us with any facts or evidence or material points about any of that.
Right.
He didn't show us any messages. And that is the point I've made quite a lot, is that in malicious communications, what did not happen is he held up a piece of paper saying, did you write that? Or did you write that? He didn't quote me any. And previously in these matters, I had asked for examples of what it is we're meant to have sent. And that sort of makes it all sound very strange. But I mean, I can't explain that. This particular school were unhappy about what we said, but they didn't really tell us exactly what was wrong with it or what it was. And then somehow the police took it seriously.
And so what's your relationship?
Here we are.
What's your relationship like with the school now? Because you'd already previously been banned from attending the school. So what have they said about all of this? Anything?
Well, in the end, we took our daughter out of the school because it became clear that before we were arrested, it became clear that we weren't going to resolve this.
Right.
We had offered mediation. We, on several occasions, offered mediation. And so why don't we just get together, maybe with an independent chair, and try and work this out? The school declined to take up that offer of mediation.
Right.
It became clear that it was never going to get better or be resolved, so we took Sasha out of the school on Friday, 24th of January. That was her last day. We transferred her to another primary school.
Okay.
And then this is quite an important point. We took her out of the school, and then 5 days later, we were arrested. And what's a bit strange is why the police didn't think, well, okay, it's been a bit of a sour set too, but, you know, they've left that school now. Why don't we just wait and see what happens? But they arrested us anyway, even though we had no longer had any connection with it.
So perhaps, are you saying perhaps there was some reason why they wanted to come after you? The school.
I don't know. I mean, bear in mind that they were also talking, trying to stop the councillor and MP from getting involved in matters. I can't answer that question.
It's quite extraordinary. And what do you expect from the police now? I mean, they must have absolutely been. I can't say it on national radio, obviously, but not too happy to discover that you work for a media company.
Well, no. I mean, when you arrest two journalists, it never really ends well for the police.
No.
And one person on Twitter said, they obviously didn't realise he's a journalist and literally delivered the story to his door. And they might not be aware.
Page one story as well. I know.
It probably didn't occur to them quite a few doorbell cameras, picking up what they were doing. I mean, but I have to stress the fact that I'm not. I didn't set out to set the agenda about policing, but I think when something like this happens, you can't not tell the story, and then people, I think, who are a better placed than me can comment on how the police should respond.
No, I think you've conducted yourselves very, very properly and professionally, and I don't think anyone would accuse you of trying to sensationalise it at all. But what happens now, though? Because surely the police, I mean, there will be lawyers, no doubt, who will say to you that you might have some kind of case against the police here for damages of some kind.
Well, I mean, on Saturday, the Police and Crime Commissioner, Jonathan Ash-Edwards, for Hertfordshire, he said this was clearly not a police matter. And that was from our point of view, quite an important thing to hear. I suppose, that degree of vindication, that recognition it wasn't a police matter, is kind of perhaps what I think the main headline for us. I mean, he said there's going to be a review of the case. So, I mean, he hasn't told me about it, of course. He hasn't been in touch with me.
Right.
So let's see what they say.
I mean,
I'll wait and see what they come back with on that one.
Will you pursue it? Will you hope that they will come to you for some kind of apology or something?
I think seeking an apology is a bit of a fool's errand. I mean, public authorities, such as the police, are always very reluctant to do that because an apology is an admission of guilt, and they'll have officers saying that if you do that, that's going to completely demoralise anybody. Maybe it'll be a sort of a fudged way of phrasing it. I'm going to reserve judgment until they respond. But I think we kind of, from talking about what happened, I think we kind of get the point. And I don't think I need to. I think I've got across what I wanted to get across, and maybe we don't need to do any more. Let's wait and see what they come back.
Well, really appreciate your time, Maxie. Thank you very much indeed. Maxie Allen, their Times radio producer, at the heart of the storm, in the eye of the storm, as he says, without wishing to be so. The police put him there, but not only bad news for them was they put him there, and then he put them on the front page of the Times. And everywhere else the story has run ever since. Absolutely ridiculous. Let's talk from the sublimely ridiculous to the ridiculously ridiculous. Oliver Robertson's here now, head of witness and worship at Quakers in Britain, because the other story, of course, over the weekend was that the police smashed in a door down at the Quaker Meeting House in London here, where a group of women, young women from a group called Youth Demand were meeting. And it seems to me that this is another absolutely ridiculous overreach by the police, even though the people from Youth Demand are not necessarily people that I would particularly defend in terms of what they want to do. Apparently they want to launch some kind of pro-Palestinian march swarming all over London. But they were having a peaceful meeting in a Quaker meeting house, which is known to be a peaceful place. Oliver, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Nice to talk to you. When did you first hear about this?
We got word about it on Thursday evening, which is when it happened. But the story, as you'll have seen, really got big over the weekend. Right. We've been impressed both by the amount of attention there's been through the media, but also by the wide range of support we've had, including from, unexpected sources, from other faiths, from lawyers getting in touch to say, do you want representation? Yeah. And I think the show of support really demonstrates how outrageous and over the top the police action was.
Oh, I think there's no question about that. Regardless of what you think of the people who were the subject of the so-called investigation, and I think they were talking about 30 officers smashing down the door of a very peaceful meeting. It's absolutely outrageous, isn't it? I mean, what's the latest situation regarding what the police have either said to you or what you're going to say to them?
Well, the latest situation, there were 20 of them, and they went in, they broke down the door, they went in to all the rooms. So it wasn't just this group meeting. You had a life drawing class there, you had other groups meeting, you had people in the toilet, and the police went into all of those places to make sure nobody got out so they could find the people they wanted to arrest. Right. The people who've been arrested have now all been released on bail, none of them charged yet. And I believe that some of the bail conditions may mean that they'll be unable to do any further sort of protest or demonstrations until there's any charging decision made. We're speaking with the local Quakers. We're speaking about what should happen nationally. I think there's actually two issues on here. One of them is the specific actions of the police, which was clearly grossly disproportionate. You do not need 20 officers forcing entry when they didn't even bother to ring the doorbell to deal with this. But also they are working within a framework of laws which have made the possibility of protest and people participating democratically in what they want to do much more restrictive over the last 2 or 3 years. Yeah. And I think the government needs to look at changing those protest laws as well. And
what is it that they were claiming they were investigating exactly? One, what would they have charged these people with? Having a meeting? I mean, is that illegal now?
So apparently the precise thing that they were arrested for was conspiracy to cause a public nuisance, which is one of the new things coming under these protest laws in the last 2 years. Now, for me, when I think about conspiracy, I think of really bad things like murder or terrorism or overthrowing the state. Racketeering. I don't think about being a nuisance, and so I think that's one of the things where it's just the law has gone too far. They're trying to prevent any way of people demonstrating against the status quo. And actually, I think that when people are doing protests, whether or not you agree with them, we want people to be able to participate in the public affairs of this country, to say what they think about the way our country should be. That's part of democracy. It's more than just voting every 5 years. And so preventing people being able to do that, I think, is profoundly anti-democratic and something that shouldn't be happening.
Well, also, the police are, shall we say, hypocrites in this area as well, because, I mean, there's one thing to pick on 6 people, but when there is a demonstration, people actually committing some violent, sometimes criminal acts, they don't do anything. So, I mean, they've got it all round the wrong way, it seems to me. But how did they even know that these people were in the Quaker meeting house? I mean, that's an issue as well that you'd be worried about, isn't it?
The meeting was publicly advertised. It wasn't something that the organisers thought was, inappropriate or clandestine or anything. And so, anyone could go on their website and find out. It was an open meeting for anyone to join. In fact, I believe at least one of the people arrested had never been before. They were coming along to this welcome meeting to find out what was going on and to find out about the group. But I think that point you made about, what's being criminalised and what's not is important, because one of the big differences I see is around difference between things which are violent and things which are not violent. Yeah. And, if you think about, people who don't agree with Just Stop Oil, when they see Just Stop Oil things happening, I think one of the big feelings they have is about annoyance, irritation, frustration. But when you think about the riots last year, people who weren't participating in them, I think the emotion they mainly felt was fear. And those are very different things. And I think that shows the difference between what's a violent action and what's a non-violent one.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. But certainly the police should not be breaking down doors to arrest people who are just sitting there having some tea. It seems to me that's been pretty much a no-brainer. Oliver, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Oliver Robertson, Head of Witness and Worship, Quakers in Britain. I don't know what the police think they're doing. I mean, I can't imagine anybody in the police ringing me up right now and telling me this is why we have to do it. This is what we have to do because we need to safeguard the country. Because if you really want to safeguard the country, what you should do is get down to Dover and start arresting people when they're arriving here before they commit any crimes, because they're much more likely to do so than a bunch of women sitting in a Quaker house. Just a word of advice, guys. You know what I'm saying? 7:52.
This MP, the Labour MP, Tylo Owatemi, managed to claim £900 for her pet rent for her cockapoo, Bella. Now this, believe it or not, is completely within the rules. So she has done absolutely nothing wrong. So who should we blame? Should we blame the MP? Should we blame the whole system? But the fact that she has claimed £900 for a pet, for the pet's rent, just shows you that the system probably needs looking at.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:55. I'm Mike Graham. Mike, any compensation paid to Mr. Allen must be paid from the police pension fund and not from the taxpayers' pocket, says Andy in Hexham. Lots of you have got things to say about the police in Hertfordshire and elsewhere as well. But let's talk now to Stephen Wolfe, Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, because we've got plenty of criminals going into the country every single day, but they don't seem to get arrested until they actually commit a crime, funnily enough, apart from the crime of landing here, which is illegal. Stephen, very good morning to you.
Very good morning, Mike.
Good to see you. Previously, you and I have had conversations about the likelihood that people coming here legally on student visas, on work visas, are probably overstaying their welcome and contributing to the overall illegal migration population. And so it turns out to be. According to the piece in the Telegraph today, some 40% of all asylum claimants are now migrants who have overstayed their visas. So we're now not only faced with the ridiculous numbers of people coming illegally on small boats, we've now got people coming legally, staying and becoming illegal.
Absolutely, Mike. This is an issue that I think you and I have both talked about now for nearly 2 years.
Yeah.
I was looking back at some old interviews and some of the research that we'd done, and I remember coming on your show and raising this issue with you. And you continued with that, and no one's listened.
Yeah.
No one's listened to the three big areas. One is the rise of those coming across on the Channel boats, which you've talked about extensively. The second is the visa issues that we're talking about now, and the third is family reunion. And when we talk about visas, Mike, this is where we have the biggest criticism towards the Conservative government, because it was under Priti Patel that the rules that allowed more students to come under visas to this country, and we raised the issue that they've even allowed more opportunities for colleges to allow more people to come in. Pressure from universities who are saying that they were not getting enough money from foreign students, but are raising the concerns that many of them weren't legitimate students. These figures today are proving as right.
Yes, they absolutely are. And it now turns out as well that many of them, 10,000 I think, out of the 40,000 of them who have so far sought asylum, are now being put up in migrant hotels. So, you know, the situation gets even worse. So here's Keir Starmer saying, oh yeah, we're going to do away with hotels, we're not going to put people in them anymore. They're now putting more people in them who came here to work or to be students.
Well, that's right, and it's always a weird thing for me when I look at this, that the logic of those who are drafting policy never think that this could potentially happen. And what would occur if someone came over here claiming to be here as a student, and as soon as they arrive, as we now know with the 10,000 that are having to be housed, immediately claim asylum when they get here. They're using this as an education and student visas as a backdoor to immigration.
Yeah.
And this is wholly wrong. It breaches all our immigration laws. It breaches the principles of asylum, and it breaches the principles of fairness and common sense that the British people have, and it must be halted immediately.
Yeah, totally right. And just because we haven't got a great deal of time, I'm going to give you the migrant of the day story for you today. This is a 34-year-old Tamil, a sex offender, who's somehow made his way to the Chagos Islands and claimed asylum in the UK, of course, because the Chagos Islands is still a British protectorate. He apparently tried to commit suicide and was in need of emergency surgery. So he was flown 5,000 miles by private jet for medical treatment in the Middle East. Our expense, £100,000 worth of our expense. He's now been flown back to the Chagos Islands after the operation, and he awaits whether or not we can give him asylum. I mean, is there some idiot running this organisation?
Well, I think there are arguments that it's not just more than one idiot, but more than one. And the reason is they're all caught between the ECHR and the UN Convention. But I do say there is some hope. I've always been excessively critical of the Labour Party, but there does seem, with some recent outpourings from Labour MPs, that they're even considering reviewing the ECHR. And Yvette Cooper is even alleging that she will stop some of the claimants being able to use it for family reunion. Now, if that happens, great news. Obviously, that's something we've called for. But the fact that this is occurring, Mike, shows that they too are beginning to realise how seriously our system is being abused.
Yeah, absolutely right. Stephen, good to talk to you. We've got to run. Thanks very much indeed. Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe there, talking. Pete the Mole says, police snooping on people means every day this country moves closer to being in a 1984 situation. Michael in Birchington in Kent says, Mike, I'm disappointed to see some of the 6 police officers in Hertfordshire with their hands in their pockets, a sign of a lack of discipline. Great show, by the way. Yeah, we'll talk some more about that coming up. Brendan O'Neill's going to join us from Spiked Online, of course. We'll talk some more about the transphobic toddler. We'll talk some more as well about Harry and Meghan and the latest problems they've got, because it's all going horribly wrong for the Montecito Massive. Also, Donald Trump, and we'll get stuck into that in a little while as well. This is Talk, Morning Glory, back after the news.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us because, as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 4 minutes past 8. The sun is up. It's going to be a scorching week. It's going to be 25 degrees in some parts of the country. I know some of you will say, well, not where I am. Well, it might well be. The clocks have gone forward, so it's a bit darker in the mornings, but it's lighter now in the evenings. Peter Hitchens hates it, but I think it's rather good. British summertime is here. Things are looking up. However, the outlook outside of the weather is not looking particularly brilliant. We've got a whole series of stories this morning to talk you through. Of course, some of them are all about Prince Harry, as he used to be known, and Meghan. Apparently it's 5 years since Megxit. We'll play you another clip in a moment about all of that. Also, lots of you getting exercise. The Birmingham MPs campaigning to get a new airport open, not in Birmingham, not in Britain at all actually, but somewhere in Pakistan, in Kashmir to be precise. Also, another Labour MP getting taxpayers to pay for a dog. We've had the Thought Police breaking into a Quaker house, 20 different police officers in order to take away people not only involved in plotting some kind of demonstration in London, but also some people working in an art class. For heaven's sake, I don't know what's going on. Plus the Hertfordshire fallout from the police sending 6 different officers to the home of some parents who had been having a bit of a row with their local school. Absolutely extraordinary times. Also, we're going to talk about two-tier justice. We're going to talk about the Sentencing Commission. We're going to talk about why the NHS has decided, thanks to Wes Streeting, not to say a happy Mother's Day to anybody, but instead to give out free morning after pills at the pharmacy if you so need it. Also, the NHS are paying £80 million to translators. A German rocket has taken off and crashed immediately thereafter, thereby telling us that it's not a very good operation to run a space company from. And office jobs are a new TikTok trend. So if you don't want to go and work in an office, all you got to do is go to TikTok, watch some influencers tell you what a great time you could have in an office, and maybe you'll change your mind. 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, of course, we've got all sorts of stories about illegal migration, legal migration. We are still in a very bad place, ladies and gentlemen. I kid you not. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. This from Andy in Notts. I was a police officer for 30 years in uniform on the streets. I'm just looking at that video of 6 coppers going round to the family who had the audacity to complain about the school. 4 of the 6 are walking around with their hands in their pockets. In my day, your feet wouldn't have touched the ground if the sergeant saw that. What an absolute disgrace to the uniform, and just about sums up the depths to which policing has sunk. And Amanda says the police need to stop harassing innocent people, get out from behind their screens and patrol the streets to prevent the escalating crime. Well, you would think that's what they would do. Just before we speak to Brendan O'Neill, chief political writer at Spiked, let's have a look at celebrating, because it's 5 years since Megxit, believe it or not, since the ghastly couple actually left these shores and disappeared off to North America. Here's Harry speaking about his wife.
My partner is an exceptional human being, and I am eternally grateful for the wisdom and the space that she's been able to give to me.
Dear me. If you think she's got wisdom, then we're all in trouble, aren't we? Brendan O'Neill's here, chief political writer of Spiked. I won't insult you, Brendan, by asking you to comment on the state of Harry and Meghan. But I mean, he, for many people, will sum up what's gone wrong. Because in the last 5 years, I suppose, Britain hasn't got any better, has it?
No, it hasn't really. And I mean, the thing about Harry and Meghan, I think, is that people are just sick and tired of hearing very wealthy people who live in Montecito complain about how hard their lives are.
Yeah.
You know, if they make one more Netflix documentary about the racism they suffered or the intrusions into their privacy or whatever else they like to drone on about, I think people will go insane. You know, we're sick and tired of a duke and a duchess telling the rest of us who are struggling to make ends meet about how hard their life is. It's, you know, people have had enough of that.
Oh, I know, absolutely right. There's so much to do today. I don't know where to start, but I think we should probably start because I think this is a pretty good symptom of what's gone wrong with our political class. A Birmingham MP who spent the last few days campaigning to open a new airport, not in Birmingham, not even in the West Midlands or the East Midlands, but in Kashmir, effectively.
This is such an extraordinary story. So this is a bunch of MPs, 20 of them in total, who've signed a letter to Keir Starmer telling him that there really needs to be an airport in Mirpur in Kashmir, Pakistan-ruled Kashmir. And, you know, these are MPs whose own constituencies have gone to pot. So Tariq Ali, the Birmingham MP who signed this letter, there is currently a bin strike in Birmingham. There are rats as big as cats roaming around the streets. You know, people would quite like him to clean up his own city before he builds airports in other cities. But then if you look at the other MPs who've signed it, like Sarah Sultana, for example, the Coventry MP, these are people who openly oppose the third runway at Heathrow Airport. They say it will be damaging to the environment and it will cause the end of the planet if we keep expanding or building airports in Britain, and yet they openly agitate for a new global airport in Pakistan. The hypocrisy is off the scale, and I think it really shows how identity politics has poisoned our public life.
It totally
where
has.
we now have MPs who get more excited about development overseas than they do about in Britain itself.
Of course. And Stella Creasy, I think, has put her name to it as well, which I suppose shouldn't be that baffling since she's about as batty as you can get.
Yeah, Stella Creasy's on there. I mean, it's just a list of crazy MPs. That's essentially what it is. But it is so revealing that these are the kind of people, this is the political class that wants to enforce net zero immiseration on Brits. We're supposed to be tightening our belt, stop spouting out so much carbon, live a meeker, quieter, smaller life. That's what they say to us all the time. And yet at the same time, they want boom time for Kashmir. They want it to have a construction explosion and new airports and everything else. Just such shocking double standards. And if they don't realise how much this will irritate ordinary Brits, then they are completely out of touch.
But I think the other thing that it illustrates is how sort of different this country has become as well, because Tahir Ali, the MP in question who started this petition, basically says the justification for it is that he has a long-standing promise to do it because there are significant problems caused to a number of his constituents who are having to drive for over 3 hours to get to the nearest airport in Pakistan whenever they go back. I mean, remember during the lockdown, Leicester was never out of lockdown because it turned out that more people than in any other part of the country were flying backwards and forwards to India and therefore, you know, were catching COVID and we're then spreading it and doing all the things that we were told we couldn't do, but somehow they were able to do. We've now got a significant number of people in Ali's constituency who apparently spend as much time in Pakistan as they spend in Birmingham. You know, I'm sorry, I don't think that we need to represent those people's issues in Pakistan. We can recognise their issues in Birmingham, but I don't see why we should be recognising their issues in Pakistan. And these are people who, it seems to me, operate as if they're sort of dual nationals, and they spend half the time here and half the time there.
It's crazy. You know, it's who cares what they have to do when they go to Pakistan? I fully support the right of people to fly back and forth to India, Pakistan, other parts of the world as much as they like. That's their business. But if it's hard work when they get there because there's not an airport close to where they live or the roads are too long or whatever, tough. That's life. That's nothing to do with the British electorate, and that's nothing to do with British politics. You know, I go to Ireland regularly to visit my family there. They live on the extreme west coast. It's very hard to get there. You have to drive down lots of roads. It takes hours and hours. I'm not going to write to Keir Starmer and demand that he supports an airport in Connemara or in Galway. That would just be crazy. It's not his business. But, you know, you touch on a really important problem, which is that we have lots of MPs these days who seem not to care for their own constituents and their own constituents' problems when it comes to this country, when it comes to what we need in Birmingham or in Coventry or in London.
Yeah.
But as soon as they talk about countries overseas, their eyes light up and they get very excited. I think that's really, really worrying.
Which brings us back to the whole conversation about Muslims. And as much as we try to drag it away and, you know, try and say, look, OK, of course there are people in this country who are from the Muslim faith who completely and utterly are law-abiding citizens and who don't do anything terribly wrong and don't live in a sort of, you know, almost, you know, ghetto-like community. But it's not helped by the fact that the Prime Minister yesterday puts out an Eid Mubarak message to everybody, doesn't put out a message for Mothering Sunday, doesn't say anything about Lent, doesn't say anything about Mother's Day, and instead gives the impression that the only group of people that he cares about in this nation are Muslims.
Yeah, it doesn't help at all. It really doesn't. And as you say, you know, most Muslims in this country are law-abiding people. They just want to get by. They want a nice life for them and their families. We all know that. But there is a problem. There is a problem of integration. There is a problem amongst younger Muslims in particular, especially those who are at risk of radicalization, where they come to hold very worrying views, very problematic views, and some of them become extremists. You know, one thing that we forget, I was thinking about this during the whole discussion on the adolescence Netflix drama.
Oh, yeah.
We're supposed to be scared of this kind of skinny, white, working class kid. You know, we forget that 700 young Muslim men and boys went from Britain to fight with ISIS. There was a point in the 2010s when there were more British Muslims in ISIS than there were in the British armed forces.
Right.
And that's a real crisis of integration. So there are problems in sections of that community, and we should have the right to talk about them openly.
Yeah, absolutely right. And as I say, you know, I don't understand quite why. And interestingly enough, you've got the royal family getting involved in it as well, because I saw King Charles, I think, putting out a Mubarak message, whereas Princess Anne, almost as though she was from a different generation, but of course she's the same generation as him, and put out a Happy Mother's Day one with a picture of her and her mother, the Queen.
There's something so weird and performative about all these kind of Eid Mubarak statements that politicians and the king puts out. It's, you know, fine, if they want to say that, that's fine, but the very least they could do is also acknowledge the existence of other days of celebration and other holy days. As you say, it was Mother's Day, it's also Lent. Very little mention of those events, if any mention at all. You know, can we just remind ourselves that Britain is a secular country largely, but it has Christian foundations. This is a culturally Christian country at the very least. And that should be acknowledged by the people who rule this country and by the people who live in this country. This is a Christian secular nation. People should try to assimilate as much as possible. And of course they can pursue their own religious beliefs, but let's not forget Christian holidays. Come on.
Exactly. And as I say, I think people are getting more and more fed up. I mean, I put out a tweet yesterday on top of the Downing Street one, just because I know that people are not happy about, as you say, this kind of single-minded adherence to only paying homage to one group of people in this country. It's divisive. I mean, interestingly enough, I saw Lord Sewell has been talking about this at a conference yesterday, where he was blaming the riots clearly last year after Southport on people who were rioting, but he also said you've got to blame Guardian editors for this stuff as well, because Guardian editors, and I'm not singling out the Guardian, but he did, are the people who are complicit in not allowing certain views to be held. You know, that if you work for the Guardian and you want to write a column about, you know, why on earth is Keir Starmer celebrating Eid Mubarak, you would probably be refused the ability to do so. And Lord Sewell makes the point that as long as people, ordinary people in this country, are not given a voice, as long as they are not allowed to say certain things and they're not allowed to have certain views, they will become disenfranchised, they will become at most demonstrative, and they might even become violent about it.
Yeah, well, Lord Sewell talks a lot of sense a lot of the time, and I think he's absolutely right on this as well. And the problem is, if you cancel people all the time, if you put a lid on their beliefs and their emotions, if you tell them that they are stupid, thick gammon, they're Islamophobic, they're Europhobic, they're xenophobic, if you constantly demonize them and delegitimize their points of view, then they're going to look for other ways to express themselves. They feel that they're not taken seriously in politics or in public life or in their own communities. It will reach a boiling point and people will push back eventually. And I think those riots that we saw after Southport, which were horrendous, by the way, and I absolutely condemn all rioting. It's reckless behaviour. But that was, in some ways, the fury of the cancelled. It was an explosion of fury amongst communities that have been pushed to the sidelines for way too long.
Because of all of the things that we read every single day, we highlight them a lot on this show. One today, for example, health chiefs have spent almost £80 million on language and translation services since 2020 for patients who don't speak English. And this is nothing to do with the Muslim world. It's to do with everyone who comes to this country from a foreign country, seemingly is welcomed in and not only given sort of, you know, the right to benefits, but also the right to translators, the right to be treated differently to people who live here, who can't get an appointment at a hospital, you know, who can't even see a doctor, who can't get a dental appointment, you know, and instead what we get is people coming here from other countries to give birth, because it happens a lot. I speak to people in hospitals all the time who say that there's plenty of people who come from Eastern European countries, other parts of the world. They give birth in this country because they know that that gives them the right to remain here. And we give them not only not short shrift, we give them an interpreter to help them.
You know, the thing I don't understand about this translation story, and it is shocking that it's 80 million quid we're spending on translators in health services and other services. You know, it's bad for everyone that we have to do this. It's bad for British society itself that there are significant numbers of people here who don't have a good grasp on English. And it's bad for the immigrant communities who can't speak English because they can't engage in everyday life. And we know that there are some pretty regressive communities out there which discourage older generations in particular from learning English and say, well, you don't need it. You live in your own ethnic bubble. You can just speak your own language. That is really problematic. And that speaks to the profound crisis of integration in this country and to the divisive nature of multiculturalism, where we now have all these people living in their own separate spheres, so cut off from the mainstream that they can't even speak our language. And if we're going to just sit back and allow the country to be balkanized like this, then I think we're in big trouble.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Brendan, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Brendan O'Neill there, chief political writer at Spiked, with a very sensible view on all manner of things. Taunton Tim says, Mike, the Lady of Justice on the Old Bailey wears a blindfold. About time these woke judges abided by this. A happy Eid to you, Mike. Yeah, thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Alan in Middlesbrough says this. Another week, another Labour talking shop. They've labelled a summit to tackle illegal immigration that will deliver as much as the other talking shop, the Coalition of the Unwilling. What a joke. Yeah, don't forget, old Keir Starmer was on the phone to Donald Trump last night, apparently, telling him that we must keep up the pressure. The I newspaper has got a bit of a spun story on the front of it this morning. It says Starmer warns Trump, don't start a trade war as talks are held on tariffs. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Starmer didn't ring Donald Trump up and say, don't start a trade war, because Trump would have just put the phone down and charged him for it. I think we all know how those conversations go. When Keir Starmer talks to Donald Trump, it is pretty much the bended knee versus the general. That's how it goes. 0344 499 1000. Chris says, Mike, I live in northern Cornwall. Wadebridge and Bodmin has about 50 barber shops. Oddly, only 3 of them are listed on things like Google Maps, etc. Me and the missus have a bet if they'll be on their phones or cutting hair when we walk past one. Absolute joke that the police only just realised what's going on. This is not even the police. This is a National Crime Agency who are supposed to be the people with, you know, sort of criminal intelligence operations going on. And somebody's apparently tipped them the nod that some of the stuff going on at these barber shops might not be entirely legal. Hello, hello, hello. What's all this then? Oh, yeah, I'm a barber, mate. Are you? How come there's nobody in here? Well, they was really busy earlier. You should have been here at 10 o'clock. Loads of them. Really? Yeah, can I have a look at your till? No, you can't. Have you got any drugs to sell? Yeah, no problem at all. 21 minutes past 8.
He then called her the N-word 3 times. This is a...
Blimey.
Oh,
yeah.
that's probably a bit worse than
Isn't that
misgendering.
worse? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, battle of the what's the worst insult?
So she was dealing with, this was a prison
Her name's
inmate
Jennifer Melee, apparently. By the
Yeah,
way.
this is a prison inmate who had come for a doctor's appointment.
Oh, yeah.
And she's the one who's in trouble, even though he tried to lunge at her, called her the N-word 3 times, but because she described a male-specific problem on the phone to another colleague to explain what was going on with this patient,
bonkers, isn't it?
she is now potentially going to lose her job.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:23. We are here, of course, all the way through until 10 o'clock. 4 glorious hours of Morning Glory every weekday morning. And this week, it's going to be an absolute scorcher. Apparently, 25 degrees is going to be the heating point of this country, which is rather nice. It was lovely over the weekend when the clocks, of course, went forward. I hope you remember to do that, because if you didn't, you're going to be waking up a little bit too early. Or too late, actually, I should say. We had this conversation on Friday, didn't we? Nobody could quite work out what was going on. Let's get a voice note from Kevin on tackling the small boats.
Morning, Mike. Kevin from Stafford here again. I'm really surprised that these people smugglers haven't scaled up their operations from small boats by hiring a couple of cruise liners or a few ferries and bringing their cargo over en masse, really, you know, docking in Dover or Tilbury and what have you, and unloading hundreds, if not thousands at a time, rather than 50 or 60 in a rubber dinghy every few hours.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised, although you have to say the dinghies have got bigger, you know, because the ones that you're looking at right now, those are some of the smaller ones from before, which they get about 25, 30 people. And now they've got these huge, big black dirigibles, which can get about 60 people in them. So, you know, you can have, I think we've had the case of 600 people arriving in 10 boats. It is quite remarkable. Carolyn Lowestoft says this: isn't it about time we use the ECHR and someone challenges this two-tier judgment business against Brits, saying they should serve longer sentences for the same crime as a person from an ethnic group? It's scandalous, absolutely crazy in every way. It's obscene. It has to be unlawful, surely. And she says, fabulous show. Yes, well, thank you very much indeed, Carol. Got a bit of breaking news for you, by the way. The boss of Primark has quit after an investigation was launched into alleged inappropriate behaviour towards a female member of staff. Paul Marchant, the chief exec, has stepped down as chief executive of the high street brand with immediate effect. We don't know what the nature of the story is yet. We'll bring you more details on that when we can. Primark employs over 80,000 people across 17 countries, and they say they prioritise people first and focus on fair and safe working conditions. And funnily enough, I just looked up what Primark's slogan is, and it basically is there's something for everyone. Or possibly not. Certainly not much left for Paul Marchant, the boss, who's had to quit after an investigation. Let's go to the phones. Kevin's in North Yorkshire. Kevin, very good morning to you.
Hello, good morning. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on this issue about the MP representing issues in India,
Yes.
or Pakistan rather.
Yeah.
I don't see why anybody should be surprised. I mean, as MPs become representatives for largely sort of foreign people or foreign cultures, then why wouldn't we not expect that? I think, you know, until we actually start reducing the numbers that are coming in and enforcing the fact that we need to integrate people, then this is going to become worse. It's not going to become better. You know, the populations are going to increase, and therefore their representation in Parliament's going to increase.
Yeah, it can't be a good thing, can it? Because we've now got those 5 independents who sort of got elected because of Gaza. Kevin, thank you very much indeed in your North Yorkshire there. And who can forget when George Galloway won that by-election, which he then lost in the general election up in the northwest. In his victory speech, he said, "This is for Gaza." Everybody was like, "You're all right, mate. It's Britain we're in now." heaven's sake. Let's talk to Harry Cole. He's got another great column in the paper every single Monday, page 10. He's talking about the police on this one. We've already spoken to the husband in the case of the Hertfordshire police, Maxie. Nobody can quite believe what went on there. Absolutely and utterly ludicrous. Maxie and Rosaline Levine, who were arrested by 6 police officers and taken down to the local Nick and held for 8 hours on suspicion of causing malicious communication and possibly a nuisance at a school. Incredible. Daft call-outs make the police force a joke, is what Harry Cole says. Couldn't agree more. Harry, very good morning to you.
Morning, how are we doing?
Yeah, well, very well indeed, although, you know, the world gets even more crazy. You know, the police are completely out of control because you've got not only this Hertfordshire story, where the police, rather unfortunately for them, picked on a Times radio producer, which didn't end up too well for them. They now, turns out, they've sent about 20 or 30 cops into a Quaker meeting house to rough up some art students and a few sort of lefty muesli munchers.
Well, actually, I think they were, according to the version of it I read, they were eating hummus and breadsticks as the Burling cop kicked in their door. But I mean, if they're Quakers, they should be eating porridge, presumably, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, I don't think they were Quakers. I think they were just using the Quaker meeting house as a cover. Obviously, they're very dark and sinister people.
Well, I mean, look. I tried to avoid sort of, you know, getting OTT about this sort of stuff before and screaming sort of Stasi cops and, you know, back to 1984, but they're making our job quite hard in not doing that. There's another example over the weekend we had of a woman, some busybody reported another sort of hippie-ish woman who was foraging mushrooms in her local park, and she got a sort of knock from the cops as well. For picking mushrooms, and then obviously we've got the you know, every day it seems there's a sort of another overreach. Obviously, the parents complaining on WhatsApp, the sort of peaceniks sitting in their peace circle eating hummus, and you just think, who is ordering this stuff and why? Right. And well, 2 things I sort of look at tomorrow in today's paper is that, you know, one, look, I've probably got a bit of sympathy for the frontline cops who always look a little bit embarrassed by some of this stuff when you see it and think, well, why are they doing this? Who's ordering it? Yeah. And how did people get into a position of power within the police that seem to be so utterly moronic that they don't go, no, obviously we're not going to do that, or, you know, they don't sit around and think, well, hang on, are we the baddies? Why are we doing this? And then also, what's annoyed me is that yesterday we had Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, out and about on the airwaves, and Dan Jarvis, the Security Minister, both out. And both wouldn't really criticise this. You know, they were presented all these examples of police overreach, and they said, oh, it's not right for us to give a running commentary. You know, well, it kind of is right for them to give a running commentary because they are the oversight ministers of the police. No one's saying they should pick up the phone and directly sort of get involved in operational decisions. But when an operational decision has been made that's clearly daft, the police are already looking a bit sheepish themselves about it. There's no reason why the ministers responsible for the police shouldn't say, guys, what is going on? Yeah, exactly. They're the ones that set these laws. So if the laws are being badly implemented, it's for politicians to step in and go, calm down. Exactly. And also the police are constantly bleating on about how short-staffed they are and how their resources have been taken away from them. Why are they sending so many officers to something which they know themselves is not an actual breach of the law? Because they've now discussed it and decided there's no reason to you know, it was clearly an intimidatory move. You don't send 6 police officers to somebody's house unless you're trying to intimidate them. Same goes for the woman up in Manchester who had written to a councillor asking if he was going to resign, you know, over what had happened, you know, with his local MP and all the rest of it. You know, and at the end of the day, these things are clearly being done, not because they don't know the law, but because they do know the law, and they are surely trying to overstep the mark. They know the law inside out. That's the problem. I just think my hunch is that actually, you know, so many good coppers over the years have left. They go and do something else because, you know, bad morale, poor pay, you know, poor service, poor terms, you know, in the job. And the ones that have stuck around, you know, the ones that seem to be, every time you see a senior copper, you know, these days, not all of them, obviously there are some brilliant coppers out there, but it seems to me often, every time you see a senior copper on the telly, and you think, how the hell did you get the job? And, you know, they're sort of blabbering on and, you know, talking in sort of, you know, PC, well, PC literally, but also politically correct sort of, you know, sort of terms. And you just, hang on, did you go to, you know, did they come out of sort of central casting of like woke copper shop? Yeah. And it is like, what are they more concerned about? Sort of minutiae, sort of, letter of the law nannying, or actually fighting crime? And there's a report this week from a think tank called Onward, who look at this sort of thing. It's called Policing in Peril, and it looks at the fact that basically the public are paying attention to this stuff because they notice it, and they think they've basically stopped reporting crime because they think that cops are more concerned about doing this sort of, busybodying. Rather than actually fighting proper crime. And when it comes to things like antisocial behaviour, 55% of the country just think, I'm not even going to bother reporting this.
Well, it's slightly worrying, isn't it? National Crime Agency suddenly have announced that they think there might be some suspicious activity going on in some of these Turkish barber shops. Heaven forbid they're going, I think there might be a bit of money laundering, possibly drug smuggling going on. Really? I mean, people have been seeing these things going up. I mean, in fact, there was one downstairs from this very office which has disappeared years ago. But, they've been around for years, these Turkish barbers, and, clearly they're up to no good. And the National Crime Agency suddenly has discovered it. But let me ask you as well about a big story on the top of the column, which is about Thursday this week, a contentious planning application being decided by Norfolk councillors. Now, in the heady heights of you travelling around the world with the Prime Minister, I never thought you'd be writing about a Norfolk Council meeting, but this is quite an important story for the Labour Party, isn't it?
Well, it just proves a point, really, that this is the problem, that the difference between Labour's rhetoric and Labour's and lofty ideals and what actually happens on the ground. So this is about a 30 million odd deal in Norfolk. But what you've got is Rachel Reeves standing up at Spring Statement saying, we are the builders, we are the people that are going to fix Britain, we're prepared to do on our side of the house, we're prepared to do everything we need to do in order to fix growth and get growth going. Right, noble aims, good, fine. But then, the first planning application to come along since the Spring Statement, and what's going on? The Labour MPs opposing it.
Yeah.
And you'll see that all across the country. The Labour are going to have the same problems the Tories had, where they want to build more houses, they want to they want to do more infrastructure projects, but they're also local MPs. And as soon as the local opposition, the NIMBYs and co, get up in arms about something, obviously they think about protecting their seat rather than protecting the economy. So, they can talk a good game, but reality comes into it. They're going to be exactly as NIMBY as the Tories were. They're going to hit the same walls. So, as much as I love paying attention to the intricate details of Norfolk County Council, I just thought a neat little example of that exact conundrum that Labour are going to have across the country.
Absolutely. No, Dale Vince is against it as well, which means it's almost certainly not.
That's always a good sign. And it's always a good sign that it's probably a good thing to go ahead.
Exactly right. Finally, we hear overnight that Keir Starmer and Donald Trump had a conversation about trade, about tariffs. I don't know what you're hearing about that. I struggle to think that the I newspaper's warning that Starmer gave to Trump is likely. I don't think Starmer's in a position to warn Trump about anything, is he?
Well, look, we're shaping up for Wednesday when, when all of these tariffs are due to come in, 25% tariffs on cars and various other bits and bobs. We're scrambling for a carve-out, but the language coming out of the White House seems to be there will be no carve-out before, we might get one eventually, but not before Liberation Day, as Donald Trump's calling it. So I think, look, we do have things that the Americans want. There, our services industry, sort of overlap our tech industry. There is room for a deal there, but I struggle to believe they're going to get it over the line by Wednesday.
Yeah, I think so. Harry, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Harry Cole there, talking through what's going on in the world of politics this morning. But he, like me, is absolutely astonished and absolutely sure these daft police call-outs make them look an entire joke. Let's have a quick look, actually, at Donald Trump, because he's been talking a lot about what's been going on. He's supposedly upset with Vladimir Putin, according to some of the papers this morning, but he's also had a go at Volodymyr Zelensky. Check this out.
I think Zelensky, by the way, I see he's trying to back out of the rare earth deal. And if he does that, he's got some problems, big problems. We made a deal on rare earth, and now he's saying, well, I want to renegotiate the deal. He wants to be a member of NATO. Well, he was never going to be a member of NATO. He understands that. So if he's looking to renegotiate the deal, he's got big problems.
Yeah, Trump also says, this is on the front page of The Guardian, that he's peed off with Vladimir Putin for his approach towards a ceasefire, and he's now threatening tariffs on Moscow's oil exports, which of course not necessarily to the US or to Europe, but to anyone who buys oil from Russia, which would include China. That means he's going to put a 25 to 50% tariff on anything that they try and sell to America if they buy Russian oil. So it's all going on. It's all kind of kicking off. My guess is that Trump won't put the 25% tariff on British cars at all. It's just a threat. He's just dangling it it there to see what he can get out of Keir Starmer. That's what I think. 8:37 coming up. We're going to talk to Jake Wallace-Simons from the Telegraph. Arrogant BBC bosses have apparently rejected anti-Semitism training for their staff. Well, God knows they need it. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
0344 499 1000 is the number. Mike, regarding the MP and her dog rent, wasn't there supposed to be a block of flats built near Westminster for MPs who live a long way away, if not build some? And any MP who wants to stay in a hotel in London rather than the flat has to pay for it themselves and cannot claim it on expenses. Dennis in Manchester, yeah, well, I've suggested all sorts of reasons for why that would be right. But also, Chris, who mentioned it earlier, that his son was given a detention for saying that migrants are put up in hotels. He was told it was a lie spread by the right-wing media. When I said to Chris, well, I'm surprised the police didn't turn up, he says, actually, the police did ring about my boy stating that migrants lived in hotels. And I said, what all parents should say, I said, you can speak to my son if you're willing to take the door off its hinges. The police then said they wouldn't be visiting. Goodness gracious me, extraordinary. We're celebrating 5 years since Megxit. This is since Harry and Meghan left the country. Some of you may be upset that they went. I wasn't one of them. We're going to play you some key moments. And here's another one from the Family Guy, taking the mickey.
Millions from Netflix for no one knows what.
Put it with the rest of them.
Babe, time to do our daily $250,000 sponsored Instagram post for Del Taco.
I shouldn't have left the made-up nonsense.
Maybe you shouldn't have. Poor old Harry. He's now regretting it. He's being accused of being a bully. He's been accused of throwing a charity boss under a bus. I mean, absolutely extraordinary stuff. You might remember the polo match where Meghan appeared and sort of shoved the charity woman out of the way. We'll find that clip for you and play it for you. Right now, though, let's talk to Jake Wallace-Simons, author and columnist at the Daily Telegraph, of course. The BBC has been in the firing line pretty much for the last 2 years, ever since the October 7th attack, basically, and even before that, but particularly since then. Lord Mann, the government's advisor on anti-Jewish hatred, has been so alarmed at some of the anti-Semitism that's been coming out of the BBC that he's actually called for senior executives to be fired over that controversial Gaza documentary, and he's also suggested maybe they should have some anti-Semitism training, but apparently they don't want it. Jake, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, I mean, the BBC goes from bad to worse, it seems to me. I mean, I can't remember the last time they did anything. I mean, even yesterday, when Hamas operatives were admitting to killing Palestinians because they demonstrated against Hamas in Gaza, you know, the BBC didn't seem to want to cover that story at all. Instead, they had a lot of sort of anti-Israeli stories.
Yeah, I mean, if you collated all the examples of anti-Israel bias at the BBC, you'd have a dictionary, if not an encyclopedia of lists of things. And, you know, and it really is quite egregious, and it does seem to be systematic. I mean, we had that hour-long Hamas propaganda documentary, which was narrated by the son of a Hamas commander and all the rest of it, which created this latest scandal. But that was only the one, the example that happened to catch through and break through. Right. There's lots of other examples over the years, not just since October the 7th, even before, of, you know, pro-terror songs being performed on the BBC, BBC Arabic in particular. There's a chap called Mr. Fafo. I don't know if you've heard of Mr. Fafo. He's a Hamas actor who appears in lots of their propaganda. Yeah, so he appears as a corpse, as a doctor, as a bereaved parent, as a fighter, as a journalist, all the rest of it. He's been on the BBC in news reports. I mean, it's just a laugh, really, at this point. And
wasn't he in that Gaza documentary as well?
He wasn't, well, he may have been. There's a shady figure that could have been him, so we don't know. But But Lord Mann, quite reasonably said to the BBC, do you think you might want some help with this problem? And they said, what problem? And look, whether anti-Semitism training would work with the BBC or not, I've got my doubts. I mean, it's not something that you can, it's a bit of a deep problem to solve in half an hour of, try to be nice training. But even so, it would have been a good start, wouldn't it? But the problem is that the BBC constantly takes a defensive stance against this sort of thing, rather than saying, look, it was a genuine mistake, we won't do it again and we'll apologise and all the rest of it. They say, look, it's you trying to get us. We're the victims here. We're just doing our jobs. And it's these evil Zionists who are trying to bring us down, which is the whole problem, really.
Exactly right. And Lord Mann has said that he wants there to be a proper inquiry into this Gaza documentary, how it was made, how it was commissioned, who okayed it. We understand that Deborah Furness, I think, saw it before it went out. Didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with it. Nobody seemed at any point to question why or whether anybody was involved in it who might have a link to Hamas. It turned out, of course, that the boy in question, his father is a Hamas, I think, agriculture commissioner or something like that. But obviously, the fact is he's in Hamas. And you constantly hear on the BBC, oh, well, he's in the political wing of Hamas. And you're going to go, sorry? No, there is no political wing of Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organisation. Point ends.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's a terrorist organisation, both the political wing and the military wing. But look, he was just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the documentary. There was also the cameraman who tweeted in support of October the 7th. Right. All the children who were presenting this documentary were links to Hamas, not just him. Yeah. And frankly, I saw the documentary before it was pulled by the BBC, and how any executive can watch it and think, oh, that's okay. Totally beyond me. There was one brilliant scene where Abdullah, the guy who's on the screen right now, was on a cart talking about how difficult it was to get drinking water in Gaza. Meanwhile, you can see in the background stalls selling Coke, clothes, even pet food, loads of water, and then it cut to a social media influencer, a girl who does recipes on Instagram, shopping in abundantly stocked grocery shops. I mean, the whole thing really was a bit of a joke, and how BBC executives can sit there and watch it and think, looks all right to me, it kind of says more about them than it does about us, I think.
Absolutely right. And what about Tim Davie? Because, I mean, he's been under a lot of pressure for all sorts of reasons lately. This is just one side of the BBC's problem. When you think about Hugh Edwards, whether he's ever going to pay back the money, various other stories of scandal that have happened, the pressure that they put on people to pay the licence fee, which is going up in April along with everything else. He just seems to be pretty Teflon-like, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, Lord Mann was right to say that heads have got to roll about this this Hamas documentary. But like you say, the problems that the BBC faces are far more extensive than just this one awful example of propaganda. Tim Davie, like you say, he's been a bit of a survivor. Whether his head will be the one that has to roll or not, I don't know. I doubt it. I mean, the thing about the BBC is that for every decision that's made, there is about 5 or 6 people that you can say it was their fault. Yeah. Nothing really comes down to one person, and therefore any blame gets dispersed and people continue in their jobs. So I think Lord Mann's right to say that we've got to cut through that and find the people responsible and try to change the culture at the BBC. But whether or not it will take down Tim Davie, I don't know.
Yeah, we shall see. Good to talk to you, Jake. Thanks very much indeed. Jake Wallace-Simons, author and columnist at The Telegraph. It's 8:45. A couple more messages for you. On the parliamentary estate, Kevin in Stafford says the parliamentary estate should buy a hotel or an apartment block in central London for the use of MPs who have constituencies that are 50 miles from London to stay in when working late in the Commons. No second homes, no travel costs unless 200 miles plus from London. Other expenses must be published monthly, openly, for public scrutiny. I think that's right. I mean, I've been saying this for a very long time, ever since I started working in broadcasting, actually, that, the idea that somehow MPs can enrich themselves by getting a second home, which is effectively paid for by the taxpayers, it shouldn't be allowed. It should not be happening. It's simply unfair, because ordinary people can't even afford to get on the bleeding housing ladder. These people haven't got just one house, they've got 2. And it turns out you've actually paid for helping them to do that. I remember running into a local MP. I'm not even sure if he's still around, but he was in my neighbourhood one day, and he came up to me and he said, "Oh, you're Mike Graham." He said, "Oh, I'm so-and-so, he's an MP for somewhere like Derby." I said, "Oh, great." I said, "Now I'm paying for 2 apartments here, mine and yours." He didn't think it was that funny, but it was true. 0344 499 1000. Julian in Coventry says, morning, Mike. Your guest from The Sun asked how do these senior police officers get into post? As a recently retired police officer, I can tell you, under Theresa May, she introduced direct entry with a degree into senior ranks, unlike the past when you had to work your way through the ranks, with many being ex-servicemen. We all know that students leave the sausage factory uni completely indoctrinated into this left group think. I witnessed it. Says Julian. Well, thanks for letting us know. And Lisa, who's an ex-cop, says this. Mike, these daft police decisions seem to have started after direct entry into management positions for university graduates in 2013. You could leave university, go straight into the police as an inspector or higher. Before that, you had to start as a constable and work your way up, so at least you had some life experiences before you were in a position where these decisions were made. They took the common sense out of policing. It just goes to show you that people who come out of universities educated to within an inch of their lives, overeducated and infected with the woke virus, have ruined everything. They've ruined the civil service, they've ruined banking, they've ruined the police, they've ruined the NHS. And this is why we've allowed these people to be educated beyond their capabilities and by people who are extremely far left individuals. That's why this country has gone wrong. Let's get a voice note from Christian.
Hi, Mike. The immigration situation within this country is so frustrating. I'm currently in the process of being evicted, no fault eviction, and nowhere to go, no family, no savings, and I've got no confidence that the council's going to help me. I'm sure if I came on a small boat, they probably would.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's the thing that people now mostly think. You know, you don't get any help if you're a British person. You do get lots of help if you're not British and you come from somewhere else. Absolutely ridiculous. Carol in Shoreham by Sea says, morning, Mike. Just wondering why those police officers were wearing high vis. They weren't in a hazardous environment, so together with hands in pockets looked really awful. Have a great day. Well, this is the thing. They wear high-vis jackets all the time. I was making fun of Rachel Reeves last week because she was wandering about outside of a tank trying to look like she was battle-ready, wearing a high-vis jacket, like you would if you were in a war zone. I mean, for heaven's sake. It's 8:48. Coming up, we're going to talk about that toddler who is a what do you call it? A transphobic toddler. Incredible stuff. We're going to talk to Helen Joyce, the director of advocacy at Sex Matters, because this is about as mad a story as ever heard, and there've been some mad ones. It's 8:49.
Your party's created 33 new quangos since it came to power. Do you agree with that?
When a quango can overrule the democratic elected government, no, I don't. And I think that that's the key here for me. It's perfectly fine to have advisory bodies. It's perfectly fine to have panels of experts to help shape decisions. But the final decision has to rest with ministers. Now, the Justice Secretary said that she's prepared to legislate to overcome this particular problem. I think as part of that legislative process, I and other MPs will be very vocal in our views about what we think about the Sentencing Council.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:51. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. We've got this from Brian in Spain. Do you think a reciprocal arrangement with the Pakistani government would work? They could fix our potholes. You have to laugh or you'd cry, says Brian. Funnily enough, we're talking to Robert Jenrick coming up in the next hour, and he'll be giving us his view on that Birmingham MP who wants to campaign to open an airport, not in Birmingham, not in Britain, not even in Europe, but in Pakistan. Can I go and claim asylum at the Chagos Islands, says Gigi. I'm far too scared to be living in the UK now with all the knife crime, the shoplifting epidemic and the government monthly theft of my money. Yeah, and Neil says, let's not forget that Hertfordshire police were the ones asking Just Stop Oil protesters if they were OK when they were blocking the M25, says Neil in Derby. Absolutely right. Let's get a voice note from Simon.
Simon here from sunny Southend. The story of the MPs campaigning for the airport in Pakistan. It's given me a bright idea, so I've penned a letter to Sakir, this morning, asking him if he would arrange to help me out. I'd like to holiday in sunny Estepona in southern Spain, but there's no train station, Mike. I have to get a coach and taxis all the way from the airport to Estepona. Keir, I wonder if you could sort that out for me, and whilst you're at it, I don't like the colour of the deck chairs either on the beach.
Brilliant. We could get a whole department going here, couldn't we? The department of can you help me get away to another country so when I'm there it's not very inconvenient for me. Is that okay? Also, I don't really like the immigration queues when I go to New York. Any chance you could get me sorted with a visa which actually gets me through the diplomatic channel? Thank you very much indeed. 8:53. One of the biggest and most ridiculous stories on the front pages this morning, front page of the Telegraph, is toddler kicked out of nursery for being transphobic, right? This turns out to be one of 94 pupils at state primary schools who were suspended or permanently excluded for transphobia and homophobia in 2022-23. The number's probably gone up. It includes 10 pupils from year 1 and year 3, from year 2. Maximum age of these children is 7. And one of them is nursery age. Helen Joyce is here, Director of Advocacy for Sex Matters. Helen, you and I have had some mad conversations, but I suspect we won't have had a madder one than this. This is unbelievable.
You're using my lines, Mike. I honestly don't know what to say to you about this. When I heard about this, I was like, this has to be April Fool's early. But no, we are still before April Fool's Day. Yeah. We don't know what these kids exactly have done. My guess is it's one of two possibilities. One is that they're repeating things that they've heard at home, like my mum says boys can't be girls, right, or my parents say that only a man and a woman can get married. Right. Or the other possibility is they're using slurs that they've heard at home. And in neither case is this the child. I mean, in the first case, look, people are entitled to their opinions, but obviously children can't use slurs at school. So you should deal with this the same way that you deal with any other sort of slur. Right. I mean, children hear things and then they repeat them. So I'd love to know what this was about. And I thought the Department for Education's response was very weak. They just said something about their behaviour policy. But I mean, come on.
Yes. Well, because again, whenever they don't want to be found out, they don't want to be specific. When they do want to think that they've got a case, they do want to be very specific, don't they? But I mean, as you say, the idea that anybody under the age of 7 has got some kind of agency to take a view on anything in the world which can't be dealt with at the level of a nursery school teacher or a primary school teacher is just insane. You know, if they can't handle children, they shouldn't be teachers, should they?
And they shouldn't be importing adult ideas onto children either. I mean, I object hugely to the teaching of any of these ideas in the first place in primary school, let alone in nursery. Like, children shouldn't be taught any nonsense about gender identities, and yet they are. So if teachers weren't trying to bring in things that children shouldn't even be bothered with at that age, I mean, arguably any age, but certainly not when they're little, then this wouldn't even arise.
Well, of course it wouldn't. And as you say, it's very unclear what the bar is, isn't it? I mean, so you don't really know. I mean, we've seen Hertfordshire police going to these people's homes over the course of the last week in that story that we've all been reporting, because they took exception to something that was said on a WhatsApp group or an email to a school member, a member of the teaching team. I mean, it seems to me that teachers and school leaders have gone kind of slightly mad here.
Slightly. I mean, really, that I thought was the maddest story I had ever seen, and then along came the transphobic toddler. I mean, there's two things going on there. One is people thinking that, you know, things they don't want to hear are harmful. Right. Harmful in a way that you might go to the police or suspend a child for. And the second is this, again, it's this importing of ideology into places it just doesn't belong. Like, what were the police doing when the school went to them and said, we don't like these parents, they're sending us lots of emails? I mean, you'd think they'd have the common sense to say, yeah, well, maybe you don't like those emails, but, you know, too bad.
It's
like,
not,
you know, don't read them. Don't read them. Wouldn't that be an
we're
idea?
a bit busy doing some quite important anti-criminal stuff. But this is the thing. I mean, Matthew Syed wrote a good piece about this in the Sunday Times yesterday, where he said, you know, if everything is trauma, then nothing is trauma. You know, if you start talking about how you've been traumatised because somebody said a word that you didn't like, then it kind of ceases to give any agency again to anybody else who's suffering trauma. You say, well, everybody's in the same boat. You know, whether you get, you know, shot at in a war zone or whether you get told you're a name that you don't like, it's the same thing. It's not, is it?
And we wonder why children have a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
Like, they're not being taught to be resilient. They're being taught to interpret, you know, sometimes unpleasant things that other people say, sometimes bad things that other people say. But, you know, I always said to my own children, you can't control what other people do. You can control how you react. Yeah. And that's putting the agency back in the child. I mean, the police shouldn't need to tell teachers this. This is a core teaching skill to understand that you don't have to, you know, react to people behaving badly. You can decide not to.
It is absolutely shocking. Good to talk to you, Helen. Thanks very much indeed. Helen Joyce, Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters. We're just watching, by the way, if you're seeing our live feed, pictures from the Border Security Summit starting soon in London. They're all milling about like they don't know where to sit. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any order to any of it. You think they sort of know what they would do. They don't even know where they're supposed to be. Where they're supposed to be. It's ridiculous. Who's running it? For heaven's sake. Maybe they should get some better doors protection so that they can have people on the door telling people where to go and sit down. They're all standing about and milling about. Nobody seems to know where they're going. You know, it's pretty much an allegory for this entire government. Where am I going? Where are you from? Estonia. All right, you sit down over there. No, there's already somebody sitting there. Oh, yeah, he's coming from Caracas in Venezuela. He's not supposed to be there. He's sitting in the wrong place. Surely they should break it up into kind of sections, you know, like European section, you know, world section, you know, hostile section, that kind of thing. I don't know. Just a few ideas. Stephen Cambridge says, morning, Mike. Both those police stories this morning just show that the middle and upper chiefs need to be looked at as their judgment must be impaired. I blame the woke. Exactly right. And Pete the Mole says, conspiracy to cause a public nuisance, which is what the Hertfordshire police were supposedly investigating that couple for. It says, take your pick, bro. Pro-Hamas demos every Saturday or Keir Starmer at PMQs. Take your pick. Kevin in Stafford says, I cannot wait for the Met or some other force to turn up on your doorstep or that of Julia Hartley-Brewers to arrest you for something that you might have said on air. Then they'll really get to know what it's like when the manure hits the extractor fan for trying to inhibit the freedom of the press. Yeah, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? What can I say? We got lots more coming up in the next hour. Robert Jenrick joins us from College Green. We're going to be asking him about this border security summit starting in London, which I presume he's not at. Also, we'll be asking him about the Labour MP who wants to open an airport in Pakistan and what that means, and also two-tier justice. That's a big subject for him because he's got a countdown on his very own social media page saying there's only about 15 hours to go until two-tier justice kicks in. And by the way, if you haven't seen it yet, if you missed the show, get our podcast. You can see it right there. This is Talk. I'm Mike Graham, back after the news.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. Yeah. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. Yeah. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us because, as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham. Right now, we're going to go very shortly down to Robert Jenrick, who's down in College Green. We're going to talk to him about some of the big stories that we've got this morning, which, of course, include the fact that we have got not only two-tier justice, not only two-tier policing, but we're going to have two-tier bail soon as well. As according to the Daily Telegraph this morning, people are likely to be freed on bail more quickly and more with more alacrity if they happen to be from ethnic minorities. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the MP who wants to have a new airport built, not in Birmingham, where he is an MP for, but in Pakistan. We've also been telling you about Prince Harry and the state of his situation currently. He's being accused of throwing a charity boss under the bus. And this, finally, we've been talking to you as well. We'll show you the clip again of the German rocket that misfired. And this was from Kim, who says, thankfully, that German rocket blew up on launch. I was concerned it was heading our way. Well, you know, not anymore, I think you'll find is the situation there. But there's an awful lot of people coming this way who have been in Germany. There it goes, falling back down into the sea. Absolute waste of time. 0344 499 1000. This is Morning Glory. Let's do it. Front page story this morning on the Daily Telegraph. Ethnic minorities prioritised for bail. This is hot on the heels of the other story, which we know about, which is Shabana Mahmood's going to issue supposedly an emergency law to stop judges from basically sentencing people in a two-tier system. If they're ethnic minorities, if they're trans, if they're women, they would all be sentenced to lesser time in jail than white British men. Robert Jenrick's here, Shadow Justice Secretary down in College Green right now. Robert, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Good to talk to you. This two-tier business that Keir Starmer keeps denying seems to be getting worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, in 15 hours' time, two-tier sentencing guidelines are going to come into force, which will mean that you'll be treated differently in the criminal justice system depending on the colour of your skin or your faith. They are blatantly biased against white people, against men, and against Christians. And I've been campaigning to stop this for weeks now. The Justice Secretary has totally failed. We brought forward a bill which would have given her the power to amend or to block these guidelines. She rejected that. And so within just a matter of hours, these biased guidelines have come into force. And now we learn that this is happening elsewhere as well. In her own department, they're issuing guidelines saying that you will be prioritised for bail if you're an ethnic minority, and asking the probation service when considering your sentencing requirements to take into account what culture you're from, or whether or not you might have suffered from so-called intergenerational trauma, or whether historical events might have affected you. This is complete madness, it's totally unfair, and it is two-tier justice under two-tier Keir.
And when we hear from Yvette Cooper and even from Keir Starmer, who say, oh, you know, we don't want to operate against the judges because obviously they have to have their independence. It's not for us to order them around. We certainly don't have two-tier policing. We certainly don't tell the police what they should do operationally, because we've seen the police doing some very, very strange things over the course of the last few days. I mean, they say one thing, but they do another. I mean, Shabana Mahmood's in the papers today saying she's going to issue emergency legislation to tell judges to completely ignore this sentencing policy. So which is it?
Well, we can only judge them on their actions, and we've seen now that Shabana Mahmood's own department is publishing these new guidelines which do create a two-tier system. And look, if Shabana Mahmood cared so much about this issue, she would have done something. She held a meeting. She was then rebuffed, frankly humiliated by the Sentencing Council. She said that she'd bring forward emergency legislation. She hasn't. There's now no chance whatsoever that by the end of today she can stop these new guidelines coming into force. And so from tomorrow morning, 15 hours time, you're going to have people going to court and being dealt with under these two-tier guidelines. That's completely wrong. She's utterly failed. And what I want to see is this situation rectified as quickly as possible. But if she took my advice, taken my bill forwards, it would have been fixed long ago.
Why don't they just abolish it? Because Keir Starmer suddenly woke up one morning and decided to abolish NHS England. Couldn't he just abolish the Sentencing Council? Don't you think he should do that?
I think the Sentencing Council needs total reform. It is not right that you've got judges, unelected people setting really crucial policies affecting our criminal justice system, like saying that certain groups should be privileged through the system over others. We want equality before the law. That has been the long-standing principle at the heart of our system, that everyone's treated equally. If you do a crime, you'll get the same sentence, irrespective of the colour of your skin or your faith. But that is the opposite of what is happening right now. And we need to have a root and branch scrub through all of these guidelines and rules that the Ministry of Justice, particularly under this Labour government, seem to be bringing forward, which are just embedding this unfairness in every aspect of the system.
And it seems as though, from what I'm hearing from police officers who are getting in touch with me this morning about the story in Hertfordshire about the couple who were visited by 6 police officers, that the reason why these kinds of decisions are being made by you know, leading officials in the police is because these are the people who were brought in by Theresa May straight from university, woke agendas all over the place, basically, you know, attacking people, arresting people for things that they may have said or things that they may be thinking. I suspect that the problem here in justice is that the civil service is riddled with the same kind of people, as is the judicial service.
Well, look, I think there needs fundamental change, and what you saw in Hertfordshire was very chilling. The idea that a parent can't criticise the way their school is run for fear of having the police knock on your door, arrest you, take your fingerprints, take you to a police station is completely mad. You know, we need to bring an end to so-called non-crime hate incidents and all of that nonsense. And the police should just focus on the things that really matter, enforce the law, go after these crimes like burglary and shoplifting, having your mobile phone nicked, things which seem to be increasingly decriminalised right now in our country, and return to basic common sense policing.
There's a lot of basic common sense missing from an awful lot of places. You were tweeting over the weekend as well about Tahir Ali MP for Birmingham, who started a campaign basically to get a new airport opened up, not in Birmingham, not in the West Midlands or the East Midlands or even in Britain, but in Mayapur in Pakistan.
Yeah, here is a Member of Parliament for Birmingham, a city where literally rubbish is piling up on the city's streets, where rats are crawling all over it because of the abject failure of the Labour Council. And yet what's he wasting his time on? Not things that actually affect Birmingham or this country, but whether a city in Pakistan should have an international airport. He's got to focus on the United Kingdom and the concerns of British people. And I'm sick of members of parliament in this country increasingly focusing on things that are happening elsewhere, not the interests of their own constituents. It should be one country under one flag, and that flag is not the flag of Gaza or Pakistan, it's the United Kingdom's flag and the interests of our own citizens.
What do you make of this international organised crime summit on immigration, which is going on literally as we speak? They've just started it. Keir Starmer's speaking at it. You know very well, I mean, we're going to listen to a bit of it, should we? You know very well that Yvette Cooper at the weekend is now saying that they might be looking at third countries to deport people to. It now turns out something that I was always very suspicious of, that an awful lot of people who come to this country on working visas and on education visas, student visas, they're accounting for 40% now of all asylum claimants because they overstay the visa and they decide to stay here anyway. Now turns out that Yvette Cooper and her Home Office are putting 10,000 of these people into migrant hotels. The whole thing is a shambles, isn't it?
Yeah, look, they've completely lost control of the borders. You know, the numbers coming across in small boats have risen by 31% since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. 4,000 people broke into our country on small boats in the last week alone. And I think this spring and summer is going to be an absolute disaster because the numbers are now escalating. It is open season for illegal migrants and the people smuggling gangs. And you're absolutely right to raise the issue of abuse of the legal migration system as well. This is one of the reasons I ultimately resigned as immigration minister, because I felt it was so important that we gripped this. We've got to get the numbers coming into our country illegally and legally right down. And at the moment, that's not the case, and there is no plan from this Labour government. Of course, it's right to talk to our international partners, but that's not going to be the fundamental solution. You've got to have a deterrent. You've got to say to those people that if you come here illegally, you're going to be detained, removed within hours and days, not weeks or months.
And this is the problem. I mean, he wrote a piece in the Telegraph this weekend as well about Keir Starmer not really being in charge of anything. You know, he walks around trying to make out that he's strutting the world stage. He makes telephone calls to Donald Trump. You know, he tries to create a coalition of the willing, which seems to have fallen down around his ears. You quote from the book Get In which people describe him as thinking that he's the train driver, but actually simply sitting in front of an automated train like the DLR. I mean, I share your view. I just don't think he's a leader.
I think it's becoming increasingly clear that Keir Starmer is not a leader. This country faces massive challenges. We've got stagnating growth. People are not feeling well off right now. My own constituents in Nottinghamshire are finding life tough. Bills are rising, water bills, electricity, council tax. From tomorrow, you're going to be finding national insurance contributions rising, which is ultimately going to be passed on to consumers in higher prices in the shops, and businesses are going to cut the job numbers as well as they already are in preparation. And Keir Starmer is not tackling any of these fundamental challenges. That is a real problem for our country. We need someone to grip these issues, get migration down, get the economy going again, make public services work again, and that's not Keir Starmer.
It doesn't seem to be. And what about the hypocrisy of Labour as well? You know, we've seen over the course of the last 9 months a whole series of battles, you know, with all sorts of groups that they said they wouldn't battle. Some parents are now taking the Labour government to a court over the removal of their right to go to private school with their special needs kids because of the VAT rise in payments. Rachel Reeves has hired some very expensive King's Counsel, apparently, to represent the government, who are all educated privately, it would seem, and they seem absolutely and utterly determined to stop ordinary hard-working people who have got special needs children who need to go to a private school in order to get a decent education, and they're going to fight them in the courts.
Yeah, I just hate the politics of envy, and that's ultimately what this is all about. Labour are increasing taxes on private schools, and it's hurting people who are scrimping and saving to send their kids there, and particularly those parents with children who have special educational needs, who want to take them out of mainstream schools and send them to specialist schools or the private sector, just trying to do the best for their kids. And the policy looks like it's going to be a complete failure as well, because private schools are closing and those kids are having to be placed back into schools elsewhere in the country which can't find the places, and that's going to make life more difficult for absolutely everyone in this country. It's a bad policy. We've said that we'd reverse it if we're lucky enough to be in power again in the future.
Yeah, Robert Jenrick, thank you very much indeed. Shadow Justice Secretary there talking to us about his state of play down there in Westminster. And there is, of course, as we say, a border security summit going on. We'll go and listen to Keir Starmer in a moment. Let me just say this. The Birmingham City Council have issued a statement, and we're going to speak about this in a moment, over the bin strikes. They say it is regrettable that it has come to potential redundancies. The council has consistently tried to find a solution to the industrial action. We have made a very fair offer, which means that no worker need lose any money, and that offer remains open. We'll speak to the National Lead Officer of the Unite Union coming up very shortly. But shall we dip into to Keir Starmer and have a little listen to see what he's up to?
And with our new bilateral agreement, Germany will be able to prosecute the criminal networks facilitating this vile trade. Just a few examples of the international collaboration that's so important to taking this challenge on. And it's beginning to bear fruit. At the end of last year, a major operation by French, German and British law enforcement smashed an Iraqi smuggling network with multiple arrests and the seizure of dozens of boats and engines. In Amsterdam, a man was arrested on suspicion of supplying hundreds of small boat parts to people smugglers. That was a joint operation by our National Crime Agency, together with Dutch and Belgian police. We're also working upstream to address factors that drive people towards small boats in the first place. Working with the authorities in Albania and Vietnam on campaigns to deter those who are thinking about making that perilous journey. Because there's also nothing progressive about allowing working-age people to come here illegally, instead of supporting them to build their own economies, secure a better future for their own countries, and build a safer, more prosperous world.
I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know what he's talking about. Fixing the foundations, working age people, working people. He says things that are showing signs of improving. No, they're not. They're not showing signs of improving. They're showing signs of getting worse. They've arrested a bloke in Amsterdam, apparently. Brilliant. Well done. It's absolutely unbelievable, this, isn't it? He says illegal migration makes me angry. Well, join the club, mate. Also, legal migration makes a lot of people angry, especially when legal migrants come here for a short period of time and then overstay their welcome and overstay their visa and then become asylum applicants and then get put up in hotels. That makes people angry as well. Starmer's arguing that illegal migration is unfair on the illegal migrants themselves because these are vulnerable people being ruthlessly exploited by vile gangs. Has he watched any of the videos of these people landing on the shores, screaming and shouting and cheering and saying how happy they are to be in Britain? They don't look like they're being ruthlessly exploited to me. That's not what it looks like to be ruthlessly exploited, mate. They're all singing and cheering. I mean, get out once in a while. Get out from behind your Range Rover in your Downing Street office and your migration summit. Go and actually take a look at what's happening in the world and take a look at what's happening in Britain. Go to Birmingham, have a look at the state of the streets. Go to Bradford and see what ghettos look like. Go to Rochdale and find out what's actually happening. Walk down into Forest Gate where you can see rubbish strewn across the street, where people are celebrating Eid Mubarak, the thing that you told everybody that you were very happy about. Go and get out of the bleeding office once in a while. It's 19 minutes past 9.
was no evidence to support the initial accusation, leads me to believe that this was an overreaction. And looking at the video footage that you showed before this interview, where you had 6 police officers on a quiet, suburban, peaceful street to arrest 2 people who, from what you've said and from the reports, are just parents wanting the best for their child, seems to be a complete overaction.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 22 minutes past 9. We're here till 10 o'clock. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be along there to take you from 10 until 1. Claims by a charity boss on the front page of The Sun, chuckered under the bus by Harry. This is according to Dr. Sophie Chandorkar. We'll be talking to Rupert Bell about that coming up in a little while. It's bad news for Harry and Meghan, I have to say. Lots of you have got lots to say about all manner of things. Claire says, Ray, pupil prejudice. A child at my son's school was put in isolation last week because he said boys should be boys and girls should be girls. Isolating children because they have a different view to the madness. And Margaret says in Birmingham, morning Mike, on the airport for Pakistan, I've always wanted to visit Denver, Colorado. Any chance 2-tier can help? And one from Don in Chelmsford. Mike, rats as big as cats, police kicking down doors and fences, taxpayers treated like prats, dogs claiming expenses. Welcome to our UK madhouse. I think that sort of rhymed. It was a bit of a couplet, wasn't it? Let's get a voice note from Kim.
Morning, Mike. Kim from near Bristol here. My understanding is that it's always been the case that a judge can take into account extenuating circumstances with offenders once they're charged and convicted, so the punishment is fair. But this has never before been tied to race or religion, etc., because to do so would be grossly unfair, and quite obviously so to anyone, I think. The law, up to the point of sentencing, is meant to be blind, isn't it? Like the statute, blind and just. That's the whole point of it. 2-tier is already here.
I mean, unbelievable, isn't it? Just ridiculous, the way things are going. Let's talk now, though, about the state of play in Birmingham, because Birmingham City Council, as we said, issued us a statement saying that it was regrettable, basically, that the situation has come to a head which may involve potential redundancies. The council has consistently tried to find a solution to the industrial action. They say we have made a very fair offer, which means that no worker need lose any money. That offer remains open. Meanwhile, the strike remains on, as far as I know. Let's talk to Onay Kassab, National Lead Officer at the Unite Union. Onay, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Is that right? Is that what Birmingham City Council say? They've made a very fair offer and nobody need lose any money?
Well, I'm really worried about where Birmingham Council are at, because the reality is with their proposal, people do lose money. That's exactly the point. We've got some people who are on pay protection at the moment, and that pay protection runs out in about 3 months' time. So the actual point is that people do lose money with the council's proposals. That's why we are taking strike action. We're not after more money. We don't want more money. What we want is to protect the pay of these essential public service workers.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of councils have outsourced their bin collections, haven't they? Is Birmingham one of those who hasn't done that yet?
That's correct. The source is the service is still in-house, and it should remain in-house, and it can remain in-house. These cuts are absolutely unnecessary as far as we're concerned, because if you look at whether or not this service is needed, just look at what happens when the refuse workers aren't at work. It's unfortunate, but the strike has proved exactly how essential these workers are. Now, if the council gets its way, these workers will be paid just above the minimum wage, and that's absolutely appalling.
Yeah. So when they say no worker need lose any money, that's not in fact true then?
Correct. It is not true.
Right. And what's the difference in terms of what they're making now to what they would be making?
Yep. So the top of the current grade is £32,000. They will come down to around £24,000 or just over £24,000 a year.
That's quite a big cut, isn't it?
It's a massive cut, and that's why we're taking the action. And our members didn't walk out on strike until that post was deleted and until the pay cut came in. So they waited. They didn't jump the gun. Birmingham City Council had every opportunity to put this right. They chose not to do so. And last week, when we went into talks with a view to try and settle, because there are ways of settling this, instead of trying to settle it, they threatened redundancies against people who had put letters in saying that they were protesting about having their pay cut.
Right.
So just think about that for a second. Workers have put a letter in saying that they are protesting about the pay cut, and they face compulsory redundancies as a result.
And what's happening with the rubbish at the moment? Is anybody removing it, or is it all just sitting there?
There are agency workers who the council are using, and that's part of the issue. 40% of the workforce now are precarious agency staff, and that's no way to run a service. It's also more expensive. That costs an extra £6 million a year, and there's your saving. Employ a permanent workforce instead of paying agency fees, and you save £6 million a year. But those agency workers are attempting to provide some kind of service at the moment.
Right. And is there a health issue as well? Because we've heard that there's massive rats up there, a big problem, which existed even before the strike, which was partly one of the things that you guys were concerned about.
The service has been on its knees for a while. The lorries are out of date. They should have been taken out of service. They've got a lifeline of around 7 years. Some are 11 years old. Quite often having to go back. So the service was on its knees even before the dispute. But yes, that the place is in a state. It's not something our members want. They live and work in the borough. They take great pride in the job that they do. They want to go back to work and clean up the borough. But I've got people now telling me that with that kind of pay cut, they face massive hardship when paying their rent or their mortgages. That's what's at stake for our members.
I mean, do you worry that the council is just going to go completely 100% for like agency workers and or just outsource the contract?
Well, I think that's not going to resolve the problem. We've always got that kind of worry, but it's not going to resolve the problem. It's not going to resolve the issue. Agency is more expensive. Outsourcing is a long process, and the private companies don't provide a better service. In fact, all the studies show that outsourcing services ends up being more expensive. So all that will do is exacerbate the problem.
Right. And so how long have you been on strike now?
So our members have been out since the first week of January.
Wow.
They started indefinite action from the 11th of March. We're hoping, we've got another meeting this afternoon, we're hoping that we can make some progress. We don't want to be out on strike for more day.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be even more difficult for you to clean the streets up if you do go back there, won't it? Because you'll have all, I mean, presume they haven't, I mean, I'm looking at pictures and people are telling me it's not, you might be getting agency staff moving some of it, but an awful lot of it's still there, right?
Absolutely correct. But our members are committed. So when they're back at work, they will work night and day to get the city cleaned up again. They take great pride in their work. But I would repeat, that just goes to show how vital and important these workers are. They are vital public service workers. They're vital for public health and safety. And yet the council expects the majority to be paid only just above the national minimum wage.
Well, I wish you luck on Kassab, their national lead officer of the Unite Union, trying to get a fair deal for his workers. Meanwhile, they've been out on strike since January the 1st. So it's pretty smelly up there in Birmingham. If you want to let us know just how bad it is, because it's going to get hot this week. You know what that means, right? It's going to get smellier. It's going to get more rotten. There's going to be more rats out there, big as cats. There's going to be more cats as well, more foxes, more seagulls. It's going to be ghastly. It's going to be horrific. But don't worry, the MPs are right on the case. They want to build an airport in Pakistan. Maybe you can just move Birmingham to Pakistan. Might be simpler. Might be cleaner. You never know. Let's get a voice note from Patty.
Good morning, Mike. Patty from Causton here. Regarding the transphobic 4-year-old, I think any person who's thinking about sexuality around a 4-year-old and discussing these things is not a suitable person to be looking after a 4-year-old. There is absolutely no reason why sexuality should be linked to children of that age. It's disgusting. Anyway,
Absolutely.
Great show. Have a good week.
Quite right, Patsy, thank you very much indeed. This from Peter in Norwich. He says, watching the continued madness that you bring to our attention, it has become apparent that we have crossed a point of no return. We have crossed the Rubicon. We have crossed an event horizon. The country is screwed and from now on cannot be unscrewed. The citizens of this country are not protected by our government, our police, the judiciary, nor our armed forces. We have a navy that cannot stop a rubber dinghy crossing the channel and an army that could not defend a sandcastle on Cromer Beach. Go well. Yeah, thanks very much for that. Apparently Yvette Cooper's talking now at the great organised immigration crime summit. Let's have a listen.
Consequences that flow, and through the centuries, of course, people have travelled across borders to work, to study, join family, to flee war or persecution, to escape poverty, to seek a better life or a different future, to chase new resources, or to forge new nations. But in recent years, we have seen new and serious patterns and scales of irregular and illegal migration, causing major challenges for border security, for national security, for the rule of law, for countries and the economy across so many of our countries, in source, in transit, and in destination countries alike. And two factors have accelerated and changed some of the challenges our countries face. Firstly, technology. The physical distances between nations and continents may not have changed, but technology has made the world feel a lot smaller. Organising journeys can be faster and easier than ever, and the details of a different future is suddenly right there on a smartphone in the palm of your hand.
I'll tell you what, this is real neck-breaking stuff, this, isn't it? Apparently, it's not any different. The size of the countries hasn't really changed, according to Yvette Cooper, but you can now get places quicker. Well, not if you're on a plane from this country, you can't. Going to shut down Heathrow Airport every now and again. Also, apparently, iPhones are a big thing. And they must have really been thanking their lucky stars they came to listen to this. This is from Pete the Mole. He says, Mike, when Yvette said there were gangs operating for exploitation worth billions, I thought she was actually talking about the government. And one here from Margaret, who says, morning, Mike. Yvette Clueless Cooper, she held up a sign saying migrants welcome. I think that says it all. Maybe she just hold that up. Migrants welcome. That's the end of my speech. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up, we'll keep you updated on the Border Security Summit. Whoever speaks next, I suppose, might say something interesting. You never know. I won't hold my breath. But instead, though, we'll talk about Harry on the front page. Chuckered under a bus by Harry. That's the story from Dr. Sophie Chanduka, who has been calling Harry a bully, and all sorts of terrible names. There's been misogynistic bullying. There's been harassment. This is about his own charity that he set up in honour of his mother, right? Which apparently now he is being absolutely castigated for. 540 people involved in it, who are now likely, presumably, to be out of a job. We'll find out from Rupert Bell what's going on next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:36. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10. Just under 20-odd minutes to go. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here, of course, then. Alan from Peterborough says, morning, Mike. Another week, another ridiculous idea from this government. So we are not now going to pay foreign prosecutors to smash the smuggling gangs. Can you imagine the corruption in this? And then I'll suspect we will end up paying foreign defence lawyers to represent the gangs. I'm totally sick of this country now. Keep up the great work. Well, you won't like this, I'm afraid. Keir Starmer, who's written a piece in the Mail today, has tweeted this out. Illegal migration risks our security, he says. I get it. You're angry. So am I, he says. He then says, that's why I'm rolling up my sleeves to fix it. Oh, that's all right then. As long as you're rolling up your sleeves, that will certainly sort things out. Nigel says this from Wales. Morning, Mike. Last night I drove from Heathrow back to Cardiff. It took 2.5 hours. I also had the privilege of paying £250 to park my car at Heathrow. If I can do this, why can't people who visit Pakistan? Well, that's a very good question. Why shouldn't they be able to do it? If you had three, I mean, you know, so what if the airport's 3 hours away? I mean, lots of airports that are hours away for people. Mike, a new airport in Pakistan will most likely be up and running before they start building a third runway at Heathrow, which has been debated for at least 50 years, says Roger. Yeah, absolutely right. We're going to talk to Rupert Bell in a second, but we should remind you, because we haven't done it this hour, that not only is Harry on the front pages this morning because of the complaints about him from the boss of that charity, Sentebale, that he set up supposedly in honour of his mother, it's also 5 years since Megxit. Doesn't seem like it, does it? So we've been playing you through the show all manner of different key moments since Harry and Meghan left the United Kingdom. Here's Meghan talking about Harry, you might remember this one, with Drew Barrymore.
He found you. I mean, look, life is full of surprises. I did not expect to meet H and for this to be our love story. And, you know, I'm very lucky. I am married to the funniest, sweetest, most charming. I mean, he's all the things that you're describing. He's an amazing father. And so, you know, I count my blessings because I have him, and also I have a partner who is so supportive of me.
Well, that's not exactly the way it's been put by Sophie Chanduka. She doesn't say he's the greatest man alive, or the funniest, or the kindest. She says that Harry unleashed the Sussex machine on her in a case of harassment and bullying at scale after she tried to change things at Sentebale. Have a listen to what she has to say.
At some point on Tuesday, Prince Harry authorized the release of a damaging piece of news to the outside world without informing me, or my country directors, or my executive director. And can you imagine what that attack has done for me, on me, and the 540 individuals in the Sentebale organizations and their family? That is an example of harassment and bullying at scale. And so if the world didn't want to believe that there's such a thing as bullying, this unleashing of the Sussex machine on me and the 540 employees at Sentebale who received this and have had to defend it.
Yes, two different pictures being painted here, right? So according to Sophie Chanduka, the trustee chairman of Sentebale, Harry's a bully and he unleashed the full-scale images and harassment of the Sussex machine on her. Unbelievable. By the way, you can see the summits, it's all over, they've all gone. Look at that, empty room. I don't know if that was Yvette Cooper, who's still talking. No, she's not still talking, but that was it. I mean, it lasted 10 minutes. So Keir Starmer got up, rolled up his sleeves. Yvette Cooper said, you know, the countries are still just as close to each other as they always were, but people can move around a lot quicker now. And now they've all gone. Brilliant. Well, that was fantastic, wasn't it? Let's talk to Rupert Bell, talks royal correspondent, to see what he makes of it all. Rupert, very good morning to you.
What, the 10-minute speech of Yvette Cooper, or
it's a very free-form show today, Rupert. You can speak about anything you wish. If you wish to comment on that, you may well do. I suspect you'd be more comfortable talking about this absolute car crash for Prince Harry, this, isn't it?
Well, I tell you what, there's no love lost between Prince Harry and Sophie Shanduka, who is, of course, the chief executive of the Sentebale Foundation. And it really does seem to be a war of words now between these two. And what she is saying, that Harry basically is trying to sort of shoehorn his ideas, and this image of polo, sort of the white man coming to the rescue of the Africans, is no longer relevant. But of course he still wants to play polo, and that polo match last year seems to me where the breakdown of their relationship first sort of manifested itself in the build up to that, when Harry suddenly said that he wanted to bring a Netflix crew after it was deemed that it was going to be a private event where lots of money was going to be potentially raised, but then they had to change the whole framework of the day. Then we saw the presentation that obviously was online, where we saw Meghan seemingly making Sophie Shanduka move to a place going under the trophy. It all looked a bit unseemly, but really yesterday she came out all guns blazing and basically saying Harry is the problem from the moment Megxit happened. And obviously we're sort of reflecting on the 5 years of that. It meant it became increasingly hard for Sentebale to raise money, because what was Harry's role in it, and the future, and the allegations in the spare book, in the documentary, all painted a different picture to the one that Meghan obviously wants to paint out, that he's this superhuman husband, and that he's an amazing father, as you heard there, which he may be. But clearly, when it comes to Sentebale, we have seen a breakdown of relationships, which is sad, because back in the day, this meant an awful lot to Harry. But unfortunately, the hand, perhaps, of Meghan is all over this breakdown as well.
Well, that's the trouble, isn't it? Because who knows now where it all goes. I mean, 540 people employed by this charity presumably will be out of a job. The charity will be somehow decommissioned. And all of this good work that he talks about. I mean, he used to talk about Africa being the place that he wanted to do the most good. And he doesn't seem to care about it anymore, by the looks of things.
Well, and there are other allegations about other charities that he's involved in. The Royal Park, the Parks charity has had allegations of inappropriate behaviour around, and not necessarily directed at Harry, but he has got himself into a pickle, basically. And he has created this by leaving the royal family, which comes with immediately people want to be associated with the royal family. But now that he's separated, he's a commercial entity, it has changed the dynamic, and that is what Sophie Shanduka is basically implying, that it's a very different beast, and it will struggle to raise money, which is very sad when you think that they had been doing some good work, but now that it will throw into question their ability to raise the kind of money that they need to operate effectively, helping the poor children of both Lesotho and other countries in the area. So, I mean, it really is a sad indictment of where Harry is at the moment, and he just seems bereft, because Meghan's doing everything, podcasts, programs, and is out there. Whether you think it's any good, that remains to be seen. And I know which view you'd be on, Mike. It doesn't take the brains of an archbishop to work that out. But I could assure you that at the moment, Harry just looks like a lost soul with not a lot to do.
Well, that's the trouble. I mean, and a lot of people would say, given his litigious nature, if these things that are being said by the head of this charity are untrue, or indeed he wants to challenge them, then he should come out and say something. But he's saying very little. He's been remarkably quiet on all of this.
Well, that might be the point. And remember, this Sophie Shanduka, she's a lawyer, and she made sure she would have probably covered her all bases before she did all these interviews, knowing that she must have felt that she was in a very strong position to make these claims about what Harry has done over the last couple of months, or the breakdown of the relationship, and the way he has conducted his affair when it comes to Sentebale. So it's quite interesting where it is at now, but she obviously feels she has a very strong case to make these very strong allegations against the way Harry has conducted his business within the charity.
Yes. And the charity still exists now, or does it not? Has it been disbanded?
It still exists, and that's why she made reference to the 540 people who are employed and work for the charity in doing their work, and have done. So it will have come as a surprise. It throws into question how the charity is going to move forward, because if you're pitching for business, how do you pitch for business when there's trustees have been going left, right and centre? Where is the business going to be in a year's time? Harry obviously will be no longer part of it, so it's going to have a very different dynamic. But obviously when you have someone like the Duke of Sussex as one of the key members, he had the potential just by his name to perhaps draw some interest. But that, for the short term, is not going to happen, and because they basically want, or he wants, Sophie Chanduka to resign so they can put their person in who they want now. But remember, they put her in the first place.
Absolutely right. It's bad news all round, I think, for Harry and inevitably for Meghan as well. Rupert, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Rupert Bell talks, royal correspondent on the news that Harry's on the front pages this morning, not least of the Sun newspaper, where basically donations dried up because of Megxit to this charity. She called chaos at various events and, you know, just wasn't a team player. And absolutely unbelievable stuff. Bullying at scale. The Sussex brand is toxic. I mean, you know, everything that we've said for years, you know, has all come home to roost. The chickens are coming home to roost faster and faster. Good morning, Mike, says Stuart. That Yvette Cooper looks and sounds like she's talking to a bunch of 10-year-olds stating the bleeding obvious. Exactly right. What have other countries got to do with the UK migrant crisis, says Mark. Smoke and mirrors yet again, trying to deflect the problem and not secure our borders. Take away all the free stuff and they will stop coming. It is not rocket science. Just take away the carrot, says Mac. Absolutely right. Yvette Cooper talking about people in other countries coming to the UK to escape poverty and persecution. How about starting with your own people, Yvette? How do we escape poverty and persecution for our own government? He's in Skegness, is Ian? Yeah, thanks very much indeed for that. You're quite right. I mean, if you live here, you feel as if you're being persecuted by your own government. As it says on the front page of the Daily Express today, everything's going up. £1,100 is the extra cost to people in this country, to families in this country who are going to be worse off in April, which begins next month, April Fool's Day, right? Because all sorts of bills are going up. Council tax bills, water bills, electricity bills. You've got gas bills going up as well. You've got fuel, luckily, coming down in price. But, I mean, everything else going up. It's absolutely unbelievable how much money we are all having to pay just to stand still. We've managed to find a picture that Yvette has tweeted. This is Yvette Cooper before she was Home Secretary, and there she is holding it up. Migrants welcome. Refugees welcome, I should say. That's going to come back and haunt her, isn't it? I wonder if anybody's going to use that against her. Because clearly she now doesn't think refugees are welcome, because now she wants to put international crime all over them to try and stop them from coming. Which, of course, is what she should have said in the first place. It's 9:48. Back after this.
She may make a few quid from this clothes idea. I'm not convinced about As Ever. You know her jam, her famous jam?
Yes, of course, I got one.
She can't call it jam.
It's not jam.
Because it hasn't got enough sugar in it. So she has to now call it fruit spread. I don't believe that As Ever flogging beige towels, crappy cutlery and spread is going to make her a fortune.
People who splatter their face on merchandise and stuff like that. I mean, it is absolutely appalling.
It really is.
I think it is just so cheap.
It really is tacky to just try and sell yourself all the time, isn't it?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. This from Terry in Islington. This summit is just performative. It's a piece of theatre designed to quell the growing dissent across Europe with zero intention of actually changing anything to stop migration. Oh, come on, that's not fair, Terry. You know, Keir Starmer's rolling his sleeves up. He told us. And you know what happens when he rolls his sleeves up? He really means business. He really starts to get going. How about this from Debbie? The border summit, how much is this costing us? Well, that's a waste of time and money. Our borders are open. All are welcome here, apparently. This makes me so angry. If I could leave this country, I would. We are an embarrassment and a hateful place to the British people. Well, it certainly doesn't look great at the moment, is it? Like, everything's going up in price. We've now got, you know, as I said, all sorts of things happening in April, including major changes to vehicle excise tax, which is known as VED, vehicle excise duty, and it's going to be coming in this week. Let's talk to Steve Berry, former Top Gear presenter, to get the lowdown. Steve Berry, very good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Mike.
And what's going on? I mean, you know, all these poor people have bought electric cars. You know, they thought they were going to be all right, but now they're not, it does seem, doesn't it?
No, they'll be fine, mate.
No, they'll be fine for a year, but they won't be fine after that.
Well, it's still... So instead of paying zero tax, in the first year they pay a tenner.
Yeah.
From now on.
Right.
Unless, of course, the electric car costs more than 40 grand, in which case they pay luxury car tax, 425 quid.
Yeah. So if you've got a Tesla, for example, that's what you're going to be paying.
Yeah, so it's still a fraction of what the thing cost you in the first place, Mike. If you've got a plug-in hybrid, though, so if you've got a vehicle that combines an internal combustion engine and electric motors, previously you paid zero,
right.
You're now paying the standard rate of car tax. They call it the standard rate of car tax. Hardly anybody pays it.
Yeah.
195 quid a year. This is so complex now. Do you remember what it used to be like, Mike?
Yeah.
If you got pulled over and you hadn't got it, you said, oh, it's in the post office.
Yeah, right.
Or you put a Newcastle Brown label where the tax should have been, and hope they didn't notice it wasn't the proper distance.
Right.
Now it's so complicated. It depends on whether you've got an electric car, a hybrid car, a diesel car, or a petrol car. It depends on whether your car was purchased after April the 1st, 2025, or it was purchased after 2017, or it was purchased after 2001, or it's 40 years old. It is so bloody complicated. Yeah. It's like algebra when I was at school.
I mean,
I think
why have they
there's
done
no
it?
point learning this.
Why have they done it? I mean, and also, if you, what if you've got
for inflation?
What if you've got a hybrid car which is not a plug-in? What's happening to them?
Good question, Mike. Mate, this is so complex. Let me boil it down to how simple it is.
Yeah, you're basically getting screwed is how simple it is.
Yeah, of course. If you went out tomorrow and bought a new golf-sized car, 3-door, 5-door family hatchback with a 1.5 litre motor, it's an extra 230 quid a year in road tax. If you went out and bought a big BMW, it's an extra 2.5 grand. And, Mike, if you bought a Rolls-Royce Cullinan, that thing that looks like Postman Pat won the lottery, it's an extra 20-odd grand. But
You're
like
joking.
you're going to notice when you...
You're joking. What, 20,000 for road tax?
Yeah, well, yeah, I looked it up. The most expensive road tax in the first year of any vehicle on sale in the year was a British-made car. We can be proud.
That's bonkers.
The Rolls-Royce Cullinan.
But that's ridiculous.
Which I think... Yeah, but the thing costs £300,000 plus, mate. So
but that's two-tier road tax, then, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, you're driving on the same road. Why should you pay more just because your car costs more? You're not getting anything for it.
Well, we've all done that. We've always done that because of the duty on fuel. So we've always known that it's when you look as a young man, particularly, women tend not to do this because they've got more sense. But as a young man, you might have done it. I definitely did it. You think, oh, I'm going to buy a big Jag or a big Mercedes. Look how cheap they are when they're about 10, 12 years old. So you buy one. And the maintenance is brutal, and it'll pass anything except a petrol station, and you pay an absolute fortune. Why do we call tax duty? Let's get rid of that word. Duty is something that you have to king and country. Let's call it what it is. Tax.
Tax, yeah,
It's
well,
tax.
I call it road tax. I mean, I don't care what anybody else calls it, because that's exactly what it is. But the whole thing is absolutely mad and bonkers. And the only thing that's making me slightly cheer up is that in the second year, is if you've got an electric car, you're going to be paying about 300 or 400 quid as well. So at least those virtue signallers are going to get it, just like the rest of us.
Yeah, and retrospectively, they've put it back for electric cars that were made after 2017. Instead of paying note, they're going to have to start paying the standard rate of tax as well. But this is all part of the process, the long, drawn-out process of us swapping over to electric cars. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, you know, 40 grand luxury car tax. Most of these electric cars cost over 40 grand.
Of course they do.
Well, they might have up until now, but the Chinese are coming, my friend.
Yeah.
And the old BYD there on the screen, the Chinese are coming, my friend, and they're going to get us all in electric cars, and the vast majority of them are going to cost under 40 grand. The rest of the car industry...
You won't be getting me in one of those,
The rest of the car industry's been having a laugh for ages. The Chinese are making them at an affordable, realistic price. And I'll tell you what,
yeah, that's because they use slave labour. You know, you can do that when you've got slave labour.
Well, Mike, I'm talking to you on something that was made, this device here was made under slave labour.
Yeah, I know.
Most people watching this on their phone, on their tablet, on their laptop are going to be watching something that was made on what you call slave labour.
Yeah, but we don't do this by virtue signalling and saying how great it all is, because the people like even Ed Miliband has admitted that he's getting solar panels imported into this country, which are made by slave labour, which would be fine if you didn't care about that. But they're supposed to be the caring, party who cares about not exploiting people. But of course they do. But listen, Steve, great to see you. Good to talk to you. I'm sorry to hear about your car tax, which will probably be because you've got loads of cars and motorbikes and all the rest of it. You'll probably be paying an absolute fortune. But listen, I'll see you soon. Take it easy. One final one from Lash, who says, on transphobic toddlers, what is going on? Toddlers are blunt, honest and say what they see. Years ago, before all this trans nonsense, my toddler once remarked about a woman in front of us in the queue in the supermarket who was wearing a vest top. Daddy, why has that woman in front got a beard under her arms? I'm sure he would be barred from Tesco's if he said it now. Julie Hartley-Brewis here. Very good morning.
Very, very good morning. Well, I love it. Surely all toddlers
toddler.
are trans, because
transphobic, sorry, because not trans, so no such thing as a trans child, because they all know the difference between a man and a woman.
They do.
Unlike the Prime Minister.
Unlike the Prime Minister
Yeah,
and most
I'm
of the
just saying, cabinet. I mean, that's what counts as transphobic now, doesn't it?
Oh, of course, absolutely.
Kids
madness.
are very straightforward.
They are very straightforward, and they call it as they see it. If you
why
show
is
them...
the lady fat, mummy? That sort of thing.
Exactly right. And that's shut up.
It's a fat man.
Yeah. Why has that man got boobs? I mean, it just goes on and on. Yeah.
Why is that rapist in a woman's prison, mummy?
Yeah, I don't know. The world seems to have gone even more mad since I last saw you.
Can I say, it was fairly mad on Thursday.
Yeah.
It's gone. Don't worry, because the gangs are being smashed in a global crackdown.
Have you seen the
people smuggling,
migrant
so that's done.
conference? It's all over already. It's finished. What are they talking about?
No, it's a 2-day